Daphne is preparing for an important event she's been waiting for a long time. Her golden eyes shine with hope and excitement. She reflects on the fact that this day is the last day of her contract after a year spent with Hiss. When Heath finds her, she is surprised to see him. Daphne didn't expect to see him here. Heath explains that he has been looking for Daphne everywhere and has missed her a lot. She worries about what he has to say. Heath admits that he has something important to tell her. Daphne is wary and worried. He emphasizes that it is very important. Heath's gaze is serious and determined. Daphne begs him not to say anything unnecessary. Her eyes are full of tears. She is afraid to hear the truth. Heath, filling the atmosphere with sparks, confesses that he loves her. The love percentage shows 98%, confirming his feelings. Daphne realizes she is in a new reality under the name Ra Hyon, remembering her feelings. She realizes the importance of her actions and sees the sympathy scale showing 99%. Daphne, the fifth bride, has won the Emperor's heart, unlike the previous four. She is close to success and promises to bring someone back to life if she achieves her goal. In front of Hiss, Daphne struggles with her feelings without reaching full confidence and confessing her love. She realizes that she will not overcome the last 1% without a declaration of love. The tears in Daphne's eyes reflect her inner struggle and desire for honesty. Heath is pleased that Daphne understands his feelings, despite the vagueness of her response. Daphne recalls how it all began a year ago at Karis's house. Ra Hyon, diligently studying for a state exam, receives word that he has passed, but suddenly suffers a heart attack. Shock and disbelief overwhelm her as she has spent her entire life studying, and now she must die. Overcome with pain and disappointment, she mentally wonders if God will let her go like this after all her efforts. The dark space around her is suddenly illuminated by light, and a mysterious voice offers her a second chance at life. The reincarnated man assures her that she can come back to life, but there will be a price to pay. Ra Hyon, desperate to live, agrees to any deal just to be able to breathe again. When she wakes up, she finds herself in a new body with purple hair amidst a flowering garden. Panic grips her when she sees she is wearing unfamiliar clothes and doesn't recognize her reflection in the mirror. The reincarnate informs her that she now lives under the name Daphne Karis in the Pyant Empire. Realizing that she has indeed come back to life, Ra Hyon, now Daphne, begins her new journey in the alien world. Daphne looks at her reflection, amazed. She can't believe it's really her. Confusion is red on her face and someone approaches her. The deity points out the remarkable resemblance between Daphne and the other woman, emphasizing their identity. Daphne becomes more and more immersed in her thoughts. The deity explains that it is because of this similarity that she's been offered a new opportunity. Daphne listens, feeling the tension. Daphne must now accept the new identity, Daphne Karis, not Ra Hyon. Understanding and determination appear in Daphne's eyes. Her task is to steal the Emperor's heart. Daphne faces prospects, but also many challenges. Daphne contemplates marriage to the Emperor and the need to win his heart. Doubts and fears fill her thoughts. She wonders why this is the only condition. Daphne's face reads inner struggle and despair. The deity asks if Daphne doesn't want to live. This question strikes her to the core, reminding her of the importance of choice. If she can steal the Emperor's heart, the deity will immediately bring her back to life. Daphne realizes the seriousness and risk of her mission. The deity orders Daphne to stop asking questions and focus on the task at hand. A determination arises in Daphne's soul to accomplish the goal for the sake of her life. Daphne is assigned to prepare for the Emperor's birthday, giving her a year to complete the task. The deity demands that Daphne complete the task on time, emphasizing its importance. Thinking back to the past, Daphne thinks of the difficulties after running away from home and the intertwining fears and hopes. She recalls how her name ended up on the list of those who passed the exam, which was an important moment in her life. The maid is alarmed that Daphne has slept for 10 days and worries about her condition. DeCello is surprised that Daphne slept longer than expected and wants to discuss an important matter with her. He orders Daphne to be brought in immediately, emphasizing the urgency of the conversation. The maid tries to object, pointing out Daphne's weakness and her incomplete recovery. DeCello insists that Daphne be brought in at once, not tolerating any objections. The maid, realizing the futility of arguing, agrees and leaves to carry out the order. DeCello tells Daphne that he has heard of her indisposition, expressing concern and teasing her slightly. DeCello informs her that a letter from the Imperial Palace arrived at the Karis house during the night, causing her surprise. Daphne learns that she is wanted as the new empress, causing shock and confusion. DeCello says that the Emperor's servants are on their way and Daphne needs to pack and be ready. DeCello says with a smirk that she will be the fifth bride and with any luck she will survive. Daphne is concerned and asks what he meant, realizing that the situation is more dangerous than it seemed. An inner voice tells Daphne to focus and not ask too many questions in order to survive. Daphne thinks it's a matter of life and death and tries to find the strength to fight. DeCello is unhappy with her lack of attention and asks if she's listening to him at all. DeCello mockingly calls Daphne lucky, leaving her to ponder the future and the trials. Daphne sat in the Karras residence, convinced that her presence was useless. She was surprised to find that she had become useful to those around her, though everyone thought it unbelievable. Deity suggested that she find out how Brother DeCello really felt about her. He wanted to arouse her interest in the truth behind the outward courtesy. He went on to say that she couldn't steal the heart if she didn't see it. Daphne pondered, trying to understand the hidden meaning behind those words. The deity had promised to give her the ability to read human hearts. Daphne was stunned by such an offer, realizing the possibilities this would open up for her. Suddenly, a number appeared before her eyes. 19%. Daphne was confused, trying to figure out what it meant. Deity explained that 19% was an indication of her brother's attachment to the family. He emphasized that DeCello had almost no attachment to his loved ones. From then on, Daphne could see the attachment scale above the heads of everyone she met. This new ability changed the way she looked at people. DeCello thought it absurd that a woman could lead a house. He clearly underestimated his sister's abilities. He also expressed the opinion that Daphne was not only skilled with cookware and thread. He was beginning to realize her real power and importance. Daphne, smiling, asked him if he thought it was acceptable to sell his younger sister as a bride to the Emperor. She raised doubts in him, forcing him to reconsider his decisions. DeCello accuses Daphne of appropriating everything under this roof if she were not the Emperor's bride. DeCello argues that Daphne cannot become the head of the house despite her status as heiress. 3. Daphne reflects on her brother's words, blaming herself for not seeing his true nature sooner. 4. The maid Olivia asks Daphne if she's all right, supporting her in her time of need. Daphne is reassured of Olivia's loyalty despite the changes to come. Olivia promises to remain loyal to Daphne even if she goes to the Imperial Palace. Deity observes the scene, commenting sarcastically on how much Daphne enjoyed the dinner. Daphne recalls the horrible dinner with DeCello, unable to swallow a single bite of food. Deity approaches Daphne, informing her that he has something to say to her. Daphne decides to listen to Deity as she prepares to discuss important matters affecting her future. Olivia brings cookies and herbal tea, offering to leave them on the terrace on this beautiful day. Daphne agrees to the offer and thanks Olivia for her concern. Daphne realizes that she is in the capital of the Pyant Empire, Kyalan. She is in the body of Daphne Karras of House Karras, and this is a new beginning for her. Daphne's older brother, Gemello Karras, is trying to get rid of her by marrying her off to the Emperor. This will be a pivotal moment in her destiny. Daphne ponders why the Emperor has already had 5 brides and gets no answer to her questions. She is determined to meet the Emperor and win his affection to regain her former life. Olivia asks if there is anything else she can do to help Daphne by showing concern and loyalty. Daphne expresses her gratitude to Olivia, confirming that there is nothing else she needs. Daphne reflects on how much Olivia is attached to her. She ponders what kind of man the Emperor, her future husband, is. Daphne is faced with a dilemma. How can she increase the Emperor's affection without knowing anything about him? Her resolve strengthens, and she realizes that this is an important step to get back on track. An Imperial escort arrives to pick up the girl. A man with a mustache and a young man stand waiting, expressing concern and impatience. Daphne, a girl with long purple hair, looks up from the balcony in surprise, not believing they are already here. She assumes they have been rushed. Turning to the night vision, Daphne becomes serious and tense. She is certain that one of the men is up to something, and it makes her uneasy. After gathering her thoughts, Daphne decides not to dwell on the problems. She is convinced that she will find a solution by meeting with the Emperor, and her confidence gives her strength. Keeping her cool, Daphne reminds herself of the importance of keeping promises. Her face expresses determination and seriousness. After completing her internal monologue, Daphne wishes herself good luck as a new person, Daphne Karras. She is determined to start a new life. Pulling herself together, Daphne tells herself to stay positive. She compares the upcoming challenge to an exam, hoping it won't be any harder. Daphne decides that she will get her life back and live it happily. Her face expresses firm determination and faith in a better future. Keelan Castle sparkles, heralding an important event. Rumors of a wedding fill everyone with anticipation. With a smile, the wedding is confirmed in a week, a hint of important changes in the hero's life. A young man informs a friend of the bride, the eldest daughter of the House of Karras, and the setting is filled with intrigue. The friend clarifies that it is Daphne Karras and chides him for his inattention. The atmosphere builds. The man with blue hair inquires about the other two invitees, learning of their fame and beauty. The guest reveals that one of the guests of honor is loyal servant Ethan Green, adding to the importance of the event. The second guest is the bride, Daphne Karras. Her rare appearance in public is surprising. Daphne has always remained in the shadows, and the news of her marriage to the new emperor shocks many. Dicello Karras, Daphne's brother, temporarily takes over as head of House Karras. Daphne, the sole heiress of House Karras, prepares for an important moment in her life. Hiss reads the letter with no interest in the bride, who is traveling to the imperial palace for the first time. He doesn't care who his bride is, as he has no plans to attend the wedding. A servant offers to help Daphne prepare for the trip and advises her to leave her hair loose. Olivia takes care of Daphne's hair, emphasizing its beauty and showing her devotion. Olivia's attachment to Daphne is 90%, and she genuinely cares for her mistress. Daphne tries to get information from Olivia about the future emperor, asking what he is like. Olivia admits that she has not met the emperor, but has heard that he is very handsome. Daphne interjects about the emperor's beauty, and Olivia confirms that he is dazzlingly handsome. Olivia is more worried about how the emperor will treat Daphne, apologizing for her tears. Daphne is touched by Olivia's genuine concern, realizing that no one has ever treated her like this before. Daphne looked in the mirror, wondering if anyone remembered her with sadness or joy. The answer was no, no one remembered her. Her brother Dicello was happy to report that the imperial carriage had arrived, and she should prepare for the big day. Although Dicello would have liked to accompany her on the big day, he stated that he was too busy, which made Daphne uncomfortable. She questioned him, feeling humiliated by his attitude while he mocked her hopes of becoming head of the house. Dicello rudely dismissed her ambitions, stating that she was too weak and insecure to ever lead the house. He angrily pointed out her weaknesses, claiming that she could never become a leader because of her softness and melancholy. Daphne suddenly realized exactly what her brother was afraid of, and that knowledge gave her strength and confidence. Dicello, on the other hand, was at this time advising her to behave herself, predicting her imminent defeat and miserable life. His fear of her became evident when she asked him about it, pinning him against the wall and looking straight into his eyes. Dicello feared that Daphne would take her rightful place as head of the house and even take his head, causing him to panic. Daphne angrily closes the door in front of Dicello, outraged at his behavior and trespassing. A mocking Daphne asks a sarcastic question of Dicello, highlighting his inappropriate behavior. A furious Dicello demands an explanation, which only increases his anger and frustration. Daphne contemptuously belittles Dicello, calling his life worthless and a pathetic loser. Daphne threatens Dicello, advising him to behave better lest he die prematurely. The maid Olivia worries about the preparations. Daphne demands her dress, ignoring everything else. Dicello, sitting on the floor, declares that he wants to see his fiancée's face, full of anger and determination. Daphne orders Dicello to leave as she needs to change her clothes, showing her power and indifference. The large castle of Keelan, capital of the Empire of Pianth, rises against a backdrop of verdant trees and clear skies, promising grandeur and secrets. Daphne wonders why everyone around her has such high attachment scales, looking around at the maids with scores of 63%, 75%, and 67%. She apologizes, smiling embarrassed, and says she wants to ask a question which piques the interest of her interlocutor. The maid with the braid responds with a willingness to help and wonders what exactly Daphne wants to know. Daphne, peering out of the darkness, asks a question about what the other empresses did after the wedding, showing her uncertainty. An older maid informs Daphne that she is expected in the kitchen and asks her to hurry, a shadow of worry appearing on her face. Another maid, turning to Daphne, asks if she needs anything, showing concern and attention. Daphne, with a smile and her eyes closed, replies confidently that the future empress cannot lack anything, showing strength. She turns around, reaffirming her resolve and determination, much to the admiration of those around her. Daphne reflects on the fact that marrying the emperor is not as rosy as it seemed and realizes the gravity of her situation. Daphne searches for the deity after entering the palace, but it has disappeared, causing her anxiety. As she got used to the new arrangements and prepared for the ceremony, Daphne tried to distract herself from her anxiety. Time passed, and Daphne was getting used to the palace routine, which helped her forget her worries. Flower petals everywhere surprised Daphne, for the wedding was scheduled for tomorrow. Luna came to Daphne with the dress for the ceremony, which calmed her down a bit. The dress was adorned with a sapphire, which made it look very elegant. Luna offered to let Daphne try on the dress, which caused her to hesitate. A servant warned Daphne that trying on the dress before the ceremony could bring misfortune to the children. Daphne began to suspect that something important was going on behind her back. She realized that she had missed something important and tried to understand the hidden secrets of the palace. The maid enters the room and notices that Lady Daphne is still awake. Quiet footsteps in the hallway add to the tension. The maid reminds Daphne that the wedding is tomorrow and asks why she doesn't go to bed early. A grim smile appears on the maid's face. The maid warns her that tomorrow will be a busy day. Daphne stares at her in silence, feeling internally tense. Daphne agrees with the maid's remark and thanks her for her hard work. She allows her to leave, feeling a growing uneasiness. The maid wishes Lady Daphne a pleasant evening and leaves. The sound of closing doors leaves Daphne alone with her thoughts. Daphne realizes that getting answers will not be easy. Shadows of doubt and uncertainty creep into her mind. The light of the lamps fills the room with a soft glow. Daphne feels as if she is going through an exam interview. Lying in bed, Daphne realizes that her relaxed lifestyle is making her sentimental. She feels tears coming to her eyes. She contemplates going out and getting some fresh air. Thoughts of the day ahead give her no peace. Daphne tentatively touches the lock, realizing the danger of her situation and wondering how long she will last. Whispers spread through the room that 4 brides have already died and the palace is having another wedding. The maid grimly informs her that the new bride will be sacrificed anyway. Daphne is stunned by what she hears. Daphne bursts violently into the room and demands an explanation. The maids are startled by her sudden appearance. One of the maids asks if Daphne heard everything. She confirms that she heard everything and demands an explanation. The maid explains that brides are sacrificed and she does not fully understand what this means. The maid says it is bad luck if the empress cannot earn the emperor's love. Daphne realizes that brides are driven north into the swamps as sacred sacrifices. She is stunned. Looking out the window, Daphne cannot believe what she has learned. She feels helpless. The maid says that if the bride does not earn the emperor's trust in a month, a terrible fate awaits her. Daphne becomes a sacred sacrifice at the will of the god. Her face reflects determination and fear of her inevitable fate. She reflects on how difficult it will be to survive this month, let alone an entire year. Now Daphne understands why Giamlo said those terrible things. The man mockingly informs her that she will be the 5th bride. If she is lucky, she will somehow survive. Daphne realizes that the previous 4 brides have died. She is overcome with panic and determination to fight for her life. She ponders that she will die before she gets a chance to get her life back. Grim thoughts of doom swarm in her head. Despite her despair, Daphne is not ready to give up and accept her death. She clenches her fists with determination. Her face lights up with determination. Daphne is not ready to give up for anything. She is determined to survive despite the odds. She firmly promises herself to survive no matter what it takes. Her eyes burn bright with the light of determination and fortitude. The day of the wedding ceremony arrives. The servants discuss that she is not eloped and has been preparing for the ceremony since morning. The bride, absolutely not crying, is brought before the guests. The servants remark that this is a truly joyless wedding. At the ceremony, the elder calls for the ceremony to begin and invites the bride to enter. The atmosphere is tense, with all eyes fixed on the door. Daphne appears despite all the rumors and revelations. Her determination amazes those present, especially Dicello, her brother. Seeing Dicello smiling, Daphne realizes his devious plan. He will use the wedding to get rid of his rival. Dicello wonders if the ceremony has driven Daphne crazy. He is clearly disturbed by her presence and confidence. In the shadows, smiling, Daphne warns Dicello to be careful. Her words sound like a threat, awakening fear in him. She squeezes his hand, asking what he will do if their marriage doesn't kill her. Her determination is genuine. Daphne declares that she is on death's doorstep and nothing frightens her anymore. This scares Dicello even more. Meanwhile, someone tells the prince it's time to go. His long-awaited appearance should turn the situation around. The prince notices that everyone has gathered earlier than he thought. This surprises him, but he is ready for action. The servants inform him that His Highness is running a little late. This creates even more tension among those present. Moss stands in the dark woods, wondering why he is here alone and what could have gone wrong in the plans. Daphne anxiously asks where His Highness is, clearly worried about his absence. Moss, with a heavy heart, informs Daphne that His Highness is not coming, causing even more concern. Daphne, in her wedding dress, realizes with dismay that the ceremony cannot go on without the groom. She realizes that it won't be easy, but is willing to deal with the situation for the sake of the future. With confidence in her voice, Daphne says there is no need to worry, trying to reassure those around her. Despite the growing tension, the crowd begins to whisper, expressing their displeasure and concern. Daphne decisively declares that she will finish the ceremony herself, showing her determination and fortitude. With a smile and confidence, she asks everyone to continue the ceremony, showing her determination to go all the way. Daphne, a beautiful bride with purple hair, confidently asks the high priest to continue the ceremony, holding a bouquet of delicate flowers. The priest, somewhat embarrassed, coughs and tries to remember at what point they stopped to continue the ceremony. Daphne speaks with a smile about how everyone has gathered on this beautiful spring day to celebrate a joyous occasion. The onlookers begin to whisper, concerned that His Highness has not come, wondering what will happen to the ceremony. Daphne, addressing the priest, introduces herself as Lady Daphne Caris and vows to accompany His Highness for the good of the Empire. The guests continue to whisper, some claiming it can't even be called a wedding, but Earl Caris looks pleased. The priest asks Daphne if she will love His Highness until death do them part. Daphne calmly answers yes. The high priest proclaims Daphne and His Highness husband and wife, but suddenly notices that they have forgotten something. Daphne reminds him that the ceremony will not be complete without the exchange of rings, asking him to deliver the ring to His Highness. The priest and Daphne, holding the rings, prepare to complete the ceremony, emphasizing the importance of this symbolic exchange. Daphne decides to take matters into her own hands and puts the ring on herself, realizing that she has no other choice. She asks the priest to give a final speech to conclude the ceremony. The priest hopes that the light of empire will illuminate the future of the newlyweds, despite the unusual nature of the wedding. The priest declares the exchange of rings complete and ends the wedding ceremony by reflecting on the revision of tradition. At that moment, Moss bursts into the hall, shouting Heath's name, and excitement overwhelms the room. Heath, without looking up, tells Moss that there is nothing wrong with his hearing and asks him not to shout. Moss informs Heath of the many conversations about yesterday's event and asks if he is going to meet the new empress. Heath looks at the papers doubtfully and remarks that he's never heard of a bride who doesn't know her groom's face. Hiss ponders how it is that a noblewoman doesn't know the face of her emperor and offers to send her his portrait. Moss, sighing, says that the noble won't stop talking about it, clearly tired of the situation. Hiss, with sadness in his voice, complains about the constant criticism, regardless of his actions. He is depressed by this pressure. Moss, his loyal butler, offers to send the Empress a bottle of champagne to smooth things over. Daphne is furious, not understanding why there are no books about the Emperor in the library. She desperately searches for any information about him. Daphne ponders that every emperor should have an autobiography and many books praising their accomplishments. She is perplexed as to why there is nothing here. In desperation, Daphne asks herself how she can steal the Emperor's heart and return to her old life if she doesn't even know who he is. She is plagued by doubts and fears. Daphne finds a book, The Empire of Pianth, Imperial Laws, and is surprised by its presence here. She realizes that it is something like a constitution and could provide answers. Suddenly, the books fall off the shelf, and Hiss, who has been hiding in the library, realizes that he may be caught. He must quickly find shelter. Heath realizes that by continuing at this pace, he runs the risk of being caught. His mind is full of thoughts of the consequences if he is found. He realizes that he has been taking too many risks lately. If he doesn't handle this situation well, he might be exposed. These thoughts cause him anxiety and tension. Daphne notices Heath and tells him to stay put and not move. She warns him that someone is watching them and it is best not to make any noise. Heath and Daphne begin to work together, realizing that they are being followed. They realize that the success of the mission and their future depend on their actions. Daphne worriedly asks Heath if he is all right, noticing his unusual condition. She doesn't realize who the man in front of her is. Heath looks at Daphne in amazement, seeing that his scale of affection for her has dropped to 0. He can't understand what has happened. Daphne is surprised and tries to understand how this is even possible. She looks at Heath carefully, feeling confused. Daphne warns that someone is approaching. Her wariness grows and she carefully observes her surroundings. Heath quietly asks Daphne to come over to him and stay quiet. His facial expression becomes serious and tense. Hiss explains that it's an assassin, but reassures Daphne that as long as they're in the dark, everything will be okay. His voice is full of confidence. Daphne replies that she shouldn't worry about her. It's better to look at herself. She is concerned about his condition. Daphne declares emphatically that she is not worried. If the assassin approaches, she is ready to fight back with the book she holds in her hands. Heath smiles and says that Daphne is very funny. His serious face softens. He begins to feel sympathy for her. Daphne wonders how Heath knows her name. At that moment, someone bursts in and exclaims loudly, "Your Highness!" In the dark library, a maid asks apprehensively if the Highness is present. She holds up a candle, illuminating her worried face. Daphne with purple hair appears from around the corner, calmly answering that she is here. Her gaze glows with calmness and confidence. The maid is outraged that Daphne was here alone at such a late hour. She warns of the possible dangers of magical traps. Daphne points to the corner of the library where the injured man is. She decisively declares that a doctor must be called immediately in a caring and responsible manner. The maid cannot believe her ears when she asks where exactly the injured man is. She is surprised and concerned about the situation, looking around. Daphne stoically waits for an answer, crossing her arms over her chest. She tensely asks if the wounded man is all right, expressing her anxiety. Surrounded by maids, Daphne learns that no one has been able to find the wounded man. The faces of the maids reflect confusion and worry, creating an atmosphere of mystery. Back in her room, Daphne ponders that perhaps the man she saw last night was a ghost. She seems pensive and preoccupied. Rumors of Daphne seeing ghosts have already spread through the palace. The maids are whispering and wondering about their mistress's strange visions. One of the maids sees Daphne and starts to cry. The whole situation suggests mysticism and mystery, increasing the tension and mystery of the story. The head maid is not happy that Daphne ran away last night, and now she is guarding her room to make sure it doesn't happen again. Daphne hears Butler Moss knocking on the door and calls her Your Highness. She asks what he needs. Moss informs her that His Highness is inviting Daphne to dinner. Daphne stands up and looks at him curiously. Daphne is surprised by the invitation and asks if this is just another palace intrigue. Moss assures her that it is an official invitation. Daphne ponders why the Emperor invited her when he didn't even bother to attend his own wedding. She's clearly annoyed and puzzled. In the next moment, Daphne expresses shock and disbelief upon discovering something unexpected. Her surprise fills the entire scene. She recalls the man from the library she saw earlier. He made a strong impression on her, and now she recognizes him. The man with blue hair, Hiss, says that they have met again. At that moment, Daphne realizes that all the events are tied together in one chain. Daphne realizes with surprise and disbelief that his is the Emperor. This discovery calls into question all her previous assumptions. She tries to remember his name, going through the options, but still does not believe in what has happened. The situation becomes even more confusing, and she tensely awaits further events. Daphne, a girl with purple hair, sits at the table waiting for dinner. Moss, the butler, offers her wine from Belsar, emphasizing its exquisite taste and aging. Moss proceeds to pour the wine, telling her that it is famous for its aging and exquisite flavor, which is why it is called divine fruit. After the wine is poured, Moss wishes Daphne and her companion a pleasant dinner, winking at her with a smile. Daphne, looking at the wine glass, thinks about how she would hate to have indigestion after this dinner. Hissa, a man with blue hair, looks at Daphne and ponders that if he had been born in Korea, he could have been a K-pop idol instead of an emperor. Hissa notices Daphne staring at him intently and asks her to stop doing that and focus on her food. Daphne embarrassedly replies that it's not what he was thinking, making excuses for Heath. Daphne explains that she wasn't staring at him, but trying to get a better look at him, because it was too dark when they first met. Daphne wonders why there are only 2 of them in such a large hall, since Heath's servants should always be on standby. She continues to ponder why their meeting is so formal and where are all the other servants, which adds to her doubts and worries. Daphne enjoys the steak, marveling that the imperial family eats such a meal every day. Her joy is obvious. Daphne clearly enjoys the food, her reaction noticeable to those around her. She blushes and is embarrassed with pleasure. Heath is surprised that Daphne is so impressed. He begins to speculate about her background and personality. Heath asks Moss about Daphne. Moss shares the information he has gathered, emphasizing its importance. Moss informs him that Daphne is the 20-year-old heiress to the House of Caris. This makes Heath suspicious. Daphne isn't a bit wordy or greedy. Heath is surprised at how different this is from his expectations. Heath ponders whether such an assessment of the heiress is demeaning. He realizes her responsibility and potential. Daphne failed to become the head of the house and now claims the title of Empress. Heath sees her strength. Daphne is pleased that the food is to her guests' liking. Her eyes shine and her dress emphasizes sophistication, creating a festive atmosphere. Hiss asks if Daphne shared the events of the previous night. His wariness is evident in his face and the austere costume. Daphne assures him that she hasn't told anyone and no one would believe her. Her calmness and confidence are emphasized by her soft facial features. Heath is satisfied with the answer and asks Daphne to keep the secret. His gaze becomes more relaxed, but the tension remains. Hiss ponders that a man of his rank must be so strong that no one would dare challenge him. Hiss emphasizes that revealing the secret would be disadvantageous to both, as the opposition looks for weakness in the imperial palace. Daphne recalls the saying about the weight of the crown and realizes the responsibility. Her pensive look and slight smile emphasize this. Daphne reassures Heath, saying that no such saying exists here and asks him not to worry. Heath promises to fulfill Daphne's every wish if she keeps the secret. His confidence and devotion is evident in his eyes. He adds that he will grant reasonable wishes but will not fulfill absurd requests. His benevolence completes the conversation. Daphne, kneeling down, is horrified to find that she has broken an expensive vase. She panics and asks herself if it is really that expensive. Heath, seeing the wound on Daphne's arm, is concerned and wonders if she has any other injuries. His concern is palpable. Daphne tries to reassure Heath that she is fine and asks him to let go of her hand. She feels a strange excitement as they look at each other. Heath, however, is reluctant to let go of her hand, fearing that Daphne will start picking up splinters again. He suggests that she stay where she is. Daphne promises that she won't pick up the shards and begs Heath to let her go. He slowly agrees, but is still worried about her. When Daphne looks into Heath's eyes, she is pierced by a strange feeling, like she's been electrocuted. Her heart beats faster. Heath invites Daphne to sit down so she can rest. She agrees, feeling her heart still beating differently than usual. The maid informs Daphne with a serious look that rumors of her escape during dinner with His Majesty are flying around the castle. Daphne smiles and asks the maid to refute these rumors, confirming that she was indeed in a hurry, but fell on the way. She laughs, revealing that she even shattered her knee in the process. Her cheerfulness puts a smile back on the faces of those around her. Daphne asks the maid to fetch some ointment, whereupon the maid hurriedly leaves the room, warning her to stay put and not cause trouble. Daphne wonders why she is suddenly like this and tries to get an answer from the invisible interlocutor. She begins to realize that she has been trembling with fear and demands an explanation from her invisible interlocutor. Daphne asks if her interlocutor knows the reason for her condition, but receives an evasive answer. Irritated, Daphne insists on the seriousness of her questions, demanding a direct answer. The invisible interlocutor remarks that her body is not just a random billet, hinting at her special origin. Daphne doesn't understand anything, and her interlocutor wonders if she experienced difficulties while she was here. She recalls that she was immediately able to talk to Olivia and read books from the library without any problems. Daphne analyzes that understanding the language came to her easily and effortlessly, which seems strange to her. She continues to ponder her situation, trying to find a logical explanation for her abilities and condition. The deity has imparted basic knowledge to Daphne from past experiences of this body. Her clothing is decorated with patterns. The deity marveled at the vividness of the emotions imprinted in Daphne's body. She gazed thoughtfully forward. The deity recalled Daphne's fear of Hiss. Daphne recognized that things had been fine at lunch, but then they changed. When Heath grabbed Daphne's wrist, she lost control of her body. Her heart beat faster. The subconscious of Daphne's body remembers the fear of Heath. Daphne realizes it. Daphne is afraid of Hiss, but she wants to win him over. She anxiously holds her head. The deity encourages Daphne to see this as a challenge. She watches with hope. Deity's garment sparkles, lending mystery to the scene. Daphne ponders the future. Daphne strongly questions the memories of the original Daphne in her body. She seeks to understand her past. The deity encourages Daphne to consider this as a fortuity. She is ready to face her fears. Daphne feels herself being drawn into the game, and the deity reminds her that games are not without challenges. She realizes that it would be boring without challenges and accepts the challenge. Daphne is annoyed and tired. She asks that the challenges posed to her be at least surmountable. Otherwise, she won't even be able to say a word to Hiss, which gives her a headache. The deity questions Daphne about how she overcame her fears earlier, hinting that those she fears are not so scary. Daphne tries to see what this has to do with her situation. Daphne is confused. She doesn't know how to overcome her current problems and win Hiss's heart in just a year. Deity suggests that she will have to deal with both challenges in order to survive. Deity adds that by winning Hiss's heart, Daphne will be able to return to her normal life. She reminisces about her normal life, dreaming of returning to it. Daphne reflects on her aspirations and successes in her world. Deity continues to question her, forcing her to reconsider her fears and ambitions. Deity emphasizes that Daphne must reclaim her precious life. Daphne is determined to cope with the ordeal and regain her former existence. Daphne decides to distract herself by reading a book, hoping that this will help her clear her head and find a solution. Her inner monologue shows her determination and hope for success. Daphne holds the book and ponders its contents. She is interested in the mysterious Marin's secret, which gives her strange feelings. The story begins with a tale of a snowbird named Marine who loved to hear stories from birds. The birds talked about the Prince of Spring who had lost his ability to make flowers bloom. Marin hears the sad news from the birds. The Prince of Spring can no longer make flowers bloom. This means they will never see spring flowers again. Time passes, a warm spring is coming, but Marin refuses to go to the places where it was cold. She continues to wait for the Prince of Spring to return. The Prince of Spring appears and asks Marin why she is still here. She replies that she has been waiting for him. The prince tells Marin that she has to go or she will melt, but Marin has found her purpose in life. Marin says her purpose is to give something to the Prince of Spring. It turns out to be a small seed. Daphne wonders why Marine would sacrifice herself to give one single grain to the prince. She admires her determination. Daphne ponders if Marine wanted to stay by the prince's side so badly that she was not afraid of death. She thinks about the power of love and devotion. Daphne ponders whether sincerity is worth as much as a snowman in the spring. She asks herself if she can win the emperor's heart if she is not sincere. Daphne, plagued by inner contradictions, ponders whether she could leave Hiss if his heart belonged to her. These thoughts torment her soul and make her doubt her future. Realizing the seriousness of her thoughts, Daphne decides to leave so as not to spoil her mood even more. Her anxiety grows and she tries to find a solution to her problems. Sitting by the window, Daphne wonders if there is anything like ramen in this place, hoping that food can improve her mood at least a little. A maid trying to find Daphne is reprimanded by the head maid for failing to find Her Highness in the library. The atmosphere becomes tense as the search for Daphne continues. The maid apologizes, saying that it is too scary in the library, to which the head maid objects that it is much scarier to leave Her Highness unattended. Suddenly, Daphne appears in the doorway, causing everyone to breathe a sigh of relief. She explains that she was just curious as to who was talking so loudly. The head maid reminds Daphne that she shouldn't be walking around the palace alone. Daphne excuses herself, saying that she wanted to unwind and read a book because she was a little depressed. The older maid, realizing Daphne's condition, asks what she can do to help her, trying to find a way to make her feel better and bring joy back into her life. Daphne, a little perked up, wonders if they have anything like ramen, hoping it might lift her spirits and take her mind off her gloomy thoughts. The older maid wonders what ramen is, to which Daphne explains with a smile that it's a favorite dish that she'd really like to eat right now to make herself feel better. The maid happily reminisces about the spicy pasta they eat from time to time. She shares it with Daphne and Hiss, piquing their interest. Heath, surprised, asks the maid if she is referring to the plants in the kitchen. The maid apologizes, saying that sometimes it's hard to sleep on an empty stomach. Daphne reassures the maid, asking her not to worry, and tells her that she can make pasta. She admits that she can't stand being hungry. Heath, slightly puzzled, asks what ramen is, clearly not knowing what the dish is. He notices the book Marin's Secret and wonders what the book is and what it might say. Smiling, Heath teases the maid, noticing that she has childlike tastes, which adds a note of lightness and humor to their conversation. Daphne was standing on the balcony when she was informed of Earl Carris's imminent arrival. She looked worried and wary. Her surprise and indignation were evident when she learned that Count Carris would arrive uninvited. She could not understand why he had been invited. The maid explained that no one had invited the Earl. He had decided to come on his own to meet Daphne. This news only increased her anxiety. Daphne asked when the Count would arrive and was told it would be before dinner. She wanted to prepare for his arrival. The red-haired man, Earl Carris, informed her that he would arrive before lunch and asked if she should prepare a place in the garden. Daphne bitterly agreed, noting that the fresh air would be better as the Earl was a stuffy man. She ordered that no tea and drinks be served until she had spoken. Daphne didn't think the Earl deserved it. She thought about the fact that if the Count started talking nonsense again, she wouldn't bitch and would hit him. Her determination was evident. The maid escorted the Count to Daphne's room. He grinned at her, realizing that she was now the Empress. The Count found the situation amusing, realizing that he must now reckon with Daphne's power. DeCello was surprised that Daphne had lasted this long. He thought she would be kicked out on the first day. His face expresses a mixture of surprise and displeasure. DeCello reflects on the fact that he would have left Daphne alone if she had kept her mouth shut. His indignation shows on his face. A servant announces that Count Carris has arrived. A hand is seen holding an elegant teacup on a saucer. Daphne meets DeCello, greeting him with the words, "Long time no see, Your Highness." A castle can be seen in the background. DeCello smiles and says he's glad to see Daphne in good health. He looks friendly and happy. DeCello apologizes for being late, saying that, as the older brother, he should have visited Daphne earlier. He looks sincere and a little embarrassed. Daphne says, with mild irritation, that if that's all there is to it, he'd better leave. She holds up a teacup and looks composed. DeCello replies that he didn't just come to say hello. He expresses regret for not explaining important things to Daphne before she was married. Daphne assumes that DeCello wants to get straight to the point. Her gaze becomes serious and attentive. DeCello informs her that there will be a meeting of the heads of the houses next week, which he will be hosting. He asks Daphne to borrow the garden for the event. Daphne discusses with her brother the use of the garden for a good cause if it becomes empty, suggesting changes to the palace. Daphne enjoys the unique dessert of the palace, emphasizing its quality and difference from life outside the palace. DeCello is confident that the heads of house will be pleased with the treats, anticipating their reactions at the upcoming event. Daphne receives a list of necessary items for the event, taking responsibility for the preparations. Daphne's attention is drawn to the expensive champagne and desserts, luxurious gifts for the heads of house, emphasizing the importance of the event. DeCello plans to seize the opportunity before Daphne is kicked out of the palace, making his own plans. Daphne tells DeCello to pick up the right things, showing her confidence and intention to carry out her plan. DeCello is shocked by Daphne's words, not expecting such a turn, puzzled by her intentions. The maid tries to help, but Daphne is sure that DeCello will manage on his own, showing her confidence. DeCello is furious at Daphne's actions, accusing her of being disobedient and impolite, leading to conflict. Empress Daphne insulted DeCello's brother, certain that she would soon be banished from the palace. He added that she should be grateful for his politeness. Daphne reminded him that without her help, DeCello would have been dead long ago. She considered his existence meaningless without her protection, which caused tension. DeCello wondered why Daphne was acting so arrogantly, causing him problems before he died. He was outraged by her insolence and intentions. The Emperor's arrival alarmed DeCello. He feared that the Emperor had come to get rid of Daphne, causing him to panic. Hiding his anxiety, DeCello greeted the Emperor, calling him the son of the Empire, showing his respect and loyalty despite his inner doubts. Emperor Hiss asked DeCello if he was really the Empress' older brother. This question caused DeCello to confirm his kinship to Daphne. Nervous, DeCello replied that he was DeCello, head of House Carris, confirming the Emperor's words and trying to maintain his status. Hiss was surprised that Daphne dared to sit in his presence. His silence left her behavior unjudged, which was unusual. Hiss wondered if he had misheard, thinking that DeCello had been impertinent to the Empress. He began to doubt his loyalty and intentions. DeCello, feeling pressured, excused himself to Hiss, citing his duties as Daphne's older brother, realizing the importance of his words and actions. DeCello, with a smirk on his face, informs Hissa that Her Highness didn't even bother to greet him. Hiss replies that it's none of his business and that he shouldn't reprimand the Empress for such things. DeCello, embarrassed, admits his mistake and apologizes to Heath. He tries to put a guilty smile on his face, but it is obvious that he is embarrassed. Heath, looking coldly at DeCello, demands that he apologize to the Empress. DeCello is stunned by such an order and does not realize what is happening. Hiss repeats his order, insisting that DeCello apologize. His gaze becomes even more stern and demanding, leaving no room for objection. DeCello realizes the gravity of the situation and begins to get nervous. He realizes that the punishment for insulting the imperial family could be severe. Daphne unexpectedly intervenes in the conversation, offering DeCello another piece of Napoleon if he wanted one. She tries to diffuse the tense situation by smiling at her brother. She orders the servants to take all the remaining Napoleons and give them to DeCello, reminding him how much joy he had when he ate them. Daphne laughs, adding that he has childish tastes. If they have any more cakes left, Daphne orders them to pack them up as well. She says mockingly that DeCello has a child's tongue as well as his mind. Daphne promises to give DeCello a more entertaining event next time, which he can't even imagine. She's clearly up to something. She says that DeCello will hold the gathering at his residence. Daphne can't believe he requested an audience with her just for that, and emphasizes that he crossed the line. Daphne, with a radiant smile on her face, asks to escort DeCello to the exit. Her joy and friendliness glowing from within, she says goodbye, waving goodbye. She closes her eyes and reflects that her body feels fear at meeting the Emperor, but for DeCello, she feels rage. Hiss approaches Daphne and asks if he can take a moment of her time. His request causes her surprise and mixed feelings. Daphne clenches her fist, contemplating how Heath just asked for her time. Her eyes fill with determination and tension. She notices that Heath's attachment scale has gone up 4%. This causes her to struggle internally and tense up even more. Daphne and Heath walk through the garden, and he notes that he has never noticed this place before. Daphne follows him, immersed in her thoughts. Heath suggests they go inside, and Daphne interjects in surprise, wondering if they should go inside right now. Daphne doubts that Heath has only asked for her time to walk through the maze. She looks at him carefully, trying to understand his intentions. Heath assures her that there is no better place for a private conversation. His gaze is serious and focused. Daphne ponders, will she be all right? Before she was distracted by her anger toward DeCello, but now she is unsure of her feelings and Heath's intentions. Daphne is concerned because she and Heath have gotten too deep into the maze, and she senses that he has something important to tell her. Heath admits that Moss has asked him to spend more time with the Empress, which surprises Daphne. Daphne listens as Heath explains that the labyrinth is very confusing, and its walls change every season, creating additional challenges. Daphne wonders if Heath has realized that she is scared, since there is no way to find a way out of the maze quickly. They continue through the maze, and Heath informs her that the designer went to great lengths to make sure no one could find their way out, adding to Daphne's excitement. Heath notices that Daphne didn't seem happy in the garden, making her feel uncomfortable and unhappy with the situation. Daphne is sad, remembering the usual family arguments, realizing that the real reason for their outing is hidden. Heath offers to take a break, realizing that tension is building, and tries to diffuse the situation. Daphne hopes that they will find a way out faster, sensing the growing anxiety and worry about their situation. Heath admits that he wanted to talk to Daphne about something important, but so far it's only been small talk, leaving her puzzled. Hiss recalls Daphne's words from the day before. His face reflects deep thoughtfulness and heavy thoughts. Hiss is given the crown and realizes the responsibility associated with the role. He realizes that he must have the strength to bear the weight. He reflects on the fact that everyone has their own crown that they want to wear, but not everyone is capable of carrying its burden. Daphne asks how heavy the Emperor's crown is and looks at Hisa with concern in her eyes. Daphne clarifies if the crown that Hiss wears is heavy. He evades a direct answer, which makes her suspect him of being secretive. She admits that the crown is not so much heavy physically as it is frightening in its essence. Daphne contemplates finding a way out of the situation. Her thoughts return to the bargain with the deity in which she agreed to win the Emperor's heart in exchange for her former life. Daphne feels anxious and hopeful that she will be able to win Hiss's heart and fulfill the terms of the bargain despite all the difficulties. Hiss remarks that being an empress is also not easy, suggesting that this must be familiar to Daphne. This causes her to have mixed feelings. She notices that Hiss's affection for her is growing again. remembering that her level used to be only 4%. She wants to know what caused this change. Daphne confidently tells Hisa that she knows how to get out of the maze. However, she is not confident in her ability to overcome her fear of Daphne Karras. She urges him to follow her, showing determination, but realizes that she is about to encounter something or someone important. They begin to walk together. Daphne reflects that fear of loss is not always a sign of weakness. After all, if there is nothing to lose, then there is something to want. Hiss observes that greed may give purpose in life, but it has no limits. For the Emperor, it is a luxury that is out of reach. Daphne ponders whether greed can really be a purpose in life. She recalls if Heath ever felt greed, even for small things. Heath admits that it was a long time ago. Daphne wonders whether he may no longer have that feeling. Hyzes isn't sure. He thinks that for an emperor, greed is a luxury that is not always available. Suddenly, Daphne falls and Heath reaches out to her, asking if she's hurt herself. His concern is evident in every gesture. Daphne looks up and sees Heath's face. Her heart beats harder and she begins to realize her feelings. She gathers herself, realizing that the scale of affection for Heath is rising. Daphne tries to keep her cool so that she doesn't lose control. Daphne, taking the flower, tries to cope with her emotions. Her eyes are filled with tears, but she continues to hold the flower in her hands. Heath, looking at her, suggests closing her eyes and focusing on the scent of the flower to calm down and find balance. He supports Daphne, assuring her that they will soon leave this place. His concern and reassurance is conveyed to her, giving her strength. With sadness and apology, Heath admits that he should have said, "I'm sorry," even though Daphne thinks it's unnecessary. He realizes that his apology is important and explains that he brought her here to explain himself and admit his guilt. Heath assures Daphne that his actions are sincere and motivated not by caprice, but by a deep concern for her. Guiltily apologizing, Heath recalls the wedding he didn't attend, realizing how much he had let her down at that moment. His realization of the reasons for his guilt makes Daphne remember the wedding ceremony where she stood alone waiting for him. The realization of his apology and its meaning suddenly comes to Daphne. The wedding he did not attend has left a deep mark on her heart. Daphne, surprised by Hisa's sudden appearance, tries to understand the reason for his unexpected visit, feeling a slight agitation. Daphne reflects that she didn't intend to blame or criticize Heath. She just wanted to understand his actions. Hiss asks why Daphne is apologizing for what happened at the wedding, his face expressing doubt and concern. Daphne believes that as Emperor Heath does not have to apologize, his actions should be understood and accepted without excuses. Heath admits that he acted rudely and explains that it was Moss who insisted that he participate in the marriage. He emphasizes that it is not Daphne's fault that he was forced into this marriage. Hiss is adamant that no one should defy the Emperor, even under pressure from the temple and the council. Daphne agrees that this does not excuse his rudeness and notes that they are both in a similar position. Hiss, realizing his mistakes, decides to ask Daphne for forgiveness, his gaze becoming clear. Daphne gently says that the Emperor doesn't need to apologize and mentions that Moss will see them off now. Moss, the butler, saw Daphne and wondered why Her Majesty was hurt. His face expressed concern. Daphne, a beautiful girl with purple hair, was puzzled. She asked Heath what happened, worried about his condition. Moss asked Heath if he had been assaulted. Heath, embarrassed, admitted his guilt, explaining that he had stepped on Daphne's dress. Heath turned to Daphne, apologizing for what had happened. He asked, surprised, how he could have accidentally stepped on her dress. Daphne, still surprised, asked if the court physician should be called. She was genuinely worried about Heath, not realizing how everything had happened. Daphne recalls how Heath knew from the beginning about her fears and destiny to be a victim. She is overwhelmed by anxiety and inner conflict. Heath continues to keep a cold-blooded face, even knowing her fears. Daphne sees the coldness and steadfastness in his eyes, which reinforces her doubts. His poker face doesn't convey emotion, and even his apology seems insincere. Hyzes remains secretive, which scares Daphne. She notices that Heath is beginning to show affection, and this causes her mixed feelings ranging from joy to bewilderment. Daphne wonders whether his affection is due to sympathy or pity. She tries to understand his true motives. Heath apologizes for leaving Daphne alone at the wedding ceremony, expressing regret, which causes her mixed emotions. Laura, a servant, asks Daphne if she has hurt herself. Daphne assures her that she is fine, despite her inner fatigue. Laura expresses concern, and Daphne confesses that she just wants to rest. Laura's concern brings her comfort. Laura agrees to mend Daphne's dress. Daphne thanks her for her help, feeling trusted and supported. Daphne feels Laura's support, which gives her strength. Her resolve strengthens, and she is ready to face new challenges. The old servant asks Daphne to let him know if she needs anything, reminding her that he is always there to help. Daphne thanks him for this. Daphne explains that it is her job to be the closest helper and asks to be contacted without delay. The servant expresses his confidence that Daphne will be okay since she didn't hurt herself. He leaves her some snacks and asks her to rest. He also reminds her that he will be serving dinner at bedtime and wishes her pleasant dreams, calling her, "Your Highness." A servant asks another what dish to bring, suggesting perhaps soup. Daphne watches this, a little puzzled. The servant is concerned about Daphne's condition and her possible rising temperature, but her condition doesn't seem serious. The hooded deity notices that Daphne has been making frequent appearances lately, unlike the old days when she was impossible to find. Daphne excuses herself, saying that she's been a bit busy, and the deity wants to commend her for something important. Deity adds that Daphne will be able to stay here longer, which leaves her puzzled and questioning. Daphne is wary of deity's words as if she's about to be kicked out, which makes her uneasy. Heath takes Daphne to the labyrinth to apologize for her actions. Deity says she can stay in the palace and she won't be sacrificed. The deity asks if Daphne knows how many empresses Hiss had before her, and continues with a story about the fate of previous brides. Daphne turns out to be Hiss's fifth empress, her predecessors having left the palace and been sacrificed in less than a month. The deity explains that the previous brides failed to win the emperor's heart, and so the temple is looking for a new empress. The temple and the High Council sent new brides and sacrificed them according to the holy will in order to weaken the emperor's authority. Hissu doesn't care who becomes empress, and as long as the temple has killed one bride after another, he shows no emotion. However, he recognizes the temple's right to keep the crown in check and does not interfere with their actions as long as the temple fulfills its purpose. Even in the Pyant Empire, there must be laws and order, though the emperor and the priests are above any laws. They can kick out empresses and appoint new ones without lifting a finger, which raises Daphne's questions about sacrifices. Daphne learns that banished brides are sacrificed because they are not allowed to stay in the capital and they know the palace too well. North of Planta, in a swampy region called Tavern, there are evil cannibal spirits. It is said that exiled empresses are exiled there. Daphne, with purple hair, angrily demands an explanation from the mysterious hooded creature. She is outraged as to why she was not told about this earlier. The creature, hiding its face, answers Daphne coldly. She almost became a sacral victim without realizing it. The creature reminds Daphne that she herself begged for her life back. Daphne, on the other hand, had hoped to deceive it. The creature marvels that Daphne was able to melt the ice in the emperor's heart, but it's not enough to be safe. Daphne recognizes that it is not enough. She realizes that her actions could have dangerous consequences. The creature asks what it was like to die and if it was pleasant. Daphne recalls her agony. The creature insists that Daphne remember the feeling. It advises her to follow the rules to avoid death. Daphne realizes that this was a clear warning. She needs to fulfill her part of the deal. Daphne decides that she doesn't want to experience something like that ever again in her life. She must fulfill her mission. Daphne ponders that she would rather not worry about others and concentrate on her goals. Her thoughts are completely consumed with the resurrection. Daphne feels relieved that Hiss's scale is going up, which brings her a sense of calm and confidence. At this moment, her thoughts are entirely occupied with the resurrection. It's the only thing she can think about right now. Hiss notices with concern that Her Highness has hurt herself, but doesn't understand why it happened. Moss offers Her Highness dinner, expressing her concern and willingness to prepare a meal. Hiss orders in a stern tone that there be no sound until his next call. His authority and determination are evident. Hyes is surprised that the Empress was not afraid of him, while everyone else trembles at the mere sight of him. He wonders why she apologizes out of the blue, expressing her doubts and concerns. Hiss tries to figure out if she really had the face he sees now, realizing the change in her expression. He recalls that no empress had ever told him that everything was fine because they all knew they had been sold. Instead of falling into despair after learning the truth, she has become more determined, and this makes Hiss admiring and curious. Daphne reflects that he who wears the crown must bear its weight, realizing that this applies to her as well. Hiss affirms this thought, deep in thought about the meaning of this statement. He begins to realize that Empress Daphne is indeed carrying her burden, facing hardship. Hiss realizes that what Daphne is trying to say is that she will not give up without a fight, and will fight for her right. He has his doubts, but decides to see what Daphne Karras can do in her determination and perseverance. Heath prepares to see if Daphne can break the plans of the Grand Temple and the High Council. Moss, the butler, anxiously calls out to His Majesty, expressing concern over the dinner refusal. Moss tries to understand what is going on with His Majesty, persistently inquiring as to the reason for the refusal to eat. He suspects that something serious has happened in the labyrinth and expresses his concerns. In all his 30 years at court, Moss has never seen His Majesty express emotion, especially after the death of the previous emperor. Daphne, as she leaves the labyrinth, looks haggard and pale. It's hard to believe she was able to have a wedding without her fiancé. She is sad as she ponders her actions and the possible consequences. Daphne and Hiss look like a perfectly matched couple, but the tension between them is palpable. Their outward calmness hides inner conflicts and reticence. Moss reports to Heath that Daphne is fine, according to the court physician. She is now resting, and Heath has nothing to worry about. Moss tries not to show his anxiety. Heath, despite his calm demeanor, is clearly worried about Daphne. He orders Moss to rest too, to conserve his strength for further action. Moss, at the window, senses that something has happened to the Empress in the labyrinth. However, His Majesty tells him nothing, which increases his anxiety. Moss asks Ethan to find out from His Majesty what happened to Daphne, since he is freely communicating with him. Moss hopes that Ethan will be able to shed some light on the situation. Ethan agrees to try to find out the truth, but warns that he can't make any guarantees. He understands the difficulty of the situation and is willing to help. Ethan, smiling, suggests simply asking the Empress what happened. He hopes that honesty and candor will help resolve the situation more quickly. He is confident that Daphne can provide more answers than His Majesty. Ethan wants to see things cleared up and peace restored in their midst. Ethan, with a smile on his face, points to Hiss's portrait, emphasizing its importance. He hopes that an honest conversation with the Empress will help everyone understand what happened in the labyrinth. The hero has a suspicion that something important has happened in the labyrinth. The Emperor and the Empress remain silent, which makes him uneasy. Laura, the head maid, is constantly guarding the Empress's chambers. This makes approaching her nearly impossible. Lord Ethan stopped by to see the hero and remarked that he had not seen such an early visit in a long time. The hero wondered about Ethan's plans. Ethan informed him that he was acting on orders from his mother. He handed over an important letter and mentioned Lady Liebelinch. Ethan confirmed that his mother had asked him to deliver the letter to the Emperor. His mission was very important. Ethan decided it was worth visiting the Empress while he was here. He felt respect and wanted to express his feelings. He explained that he couldn't make it to the wedding, so he decided to at least pay his respects to the Empress. Moss noted that the Empress is probably very concerned because of how her only wedding went. The hero thought deeply about Hiss's intentions. He wondered why Heath would take her to the labyrinth, especially after leaving her alone at the wedding. Butler Moss, with an expression of alarm, informs Lord Ethan that His Majesty wishes to speak with him. He offers to escort Ethan to the king's chambers. Ethan, with a slight smile, decides to notify Her Highness of his visit himself, declining the help of Butler Moss, who politely agrees. Despite Moss's suggestion, Ethan decides to go to Her Highness on his own, smiling with confidence. Moss humbly apologizes for his insistence. With an enigmatic smile, Ethan admits that gifts are always nicer when they are unexpected. His words evoke surprise and intrigue in his interlocutor. Hiding his intentions, Ethan asks that Her Highness not be informed of his presence. His confident smile hides his secret intentions. Ethan introduces himself to Her Majesty as the eldest son of House Green, expressing reverence and hope for favor. His confidence and calmness stand out. His Majesty Hiss, with a strained expression, asks about the letter. Ethan replies that the letter is here, maintaining a cold resolve. Ethan and Hiss's gazes cross in tense silence. Ethan confirms that the letter was sent by a spy from Aaron, which adds intrigue and mystery to their dialogue. Daphne cautiously entered the library, marveling at its emptiness and silence, wondering if it was always this empty. She looked around the shelves and thought that people in this world apparently didn't like to read books. Daphne remembered Laura saying that the library hadn't been cleaned up in a long time and that the books were long abandoned. The elderly woman sternly informed Daphne that it was forbidden to enter the library because of the recent manifestations of ghosts. The woman warned that it could be dangerous and advised her to stay away from the library. Daphne marveled that people still believed in ghosts, thinking they were naive. She wondered if the library was probably empty because no one came here. Daphne noticed that there were no books in the library on the history of the imperial palace or the emperor himself. She found a book with no title, which struck her as strange and unusual. Taking the book in her hands, Daphne felt its luxurious, soft leather cover, which piqued her interest and surprise. Daphne found the diary, and that sent a wave of curiosity through her. She couldn't believe her eyes when she saw the deeply personal feelings written inside. The diary described feelings for an unknown man and envy for a woman named Zaria. These lines made Daphne wonder who had written them and why. Daphne hesitated, not wanting to delve into someone else's secrets for the sake of her own curiosity. However, her inner restlessness kept her on her toes. Opening the diary, Daphne realized that she would find nothing specific about Heath. She felt that all her attempts were in vain. Daphne realized that she would have to act blindly, relying only on her instincts and hunches. This filled her with anxiety and uncertainty. Daphne realized that there was no point in looking for Heath's feelings in books if she couldn't even see them with her own eyes. She wondered about his true emotions. Suddenly, Heath appeared in front of Daphne, apologizing for leaving her alone at the wedding. His words touched her heart, evoking mixed feelings. Daphne stared out the window, pondering over Heath's apology. She sensed that his words were not empty and tried to understand their deeper meaning. Daphne felt a slight disappointment but tried not to show it. Her thoughts were focused on Hiss and his behavior. His face betrayed worry and regret, but the most important thing Daphne noticed was his fragility and vulnerability. It made her wonder about his true feelings and intentions. Daphne ponders why the Emperor stood out so much without ignoring her. She cannot understand his motives. Daphne recalls the last time they met in the garden, when the Emperor's scale level was only 10%. This alarms her. She realizes that progress has been made, but there is still a long way to go, and her thoughts are filled with determination. Laura reports a visit from Lord Ethan of House Green, which surprises and interests Daphne. Ethan Green introduces himself to Daphne, addressing her with respect, which causes her to have mixed feelings. Ethan smilingly suggests that Daphne just call him Ethan, showing his friendliness and intentions. He assures her that he will follow her instructions, which causes Daphne to trust him and smile slightly. Laura suggests moving to the terrace, where the atmosphere becomes more relaxed and trusting. Daphne wonders why Ethan has decided to pay her such an unexpected visit, and her heart fills with curiosity and excitement. Ethan asks with a smile if he is confusing Daphne. There is a sunset in the background, creating a romantic atmosphere. Daphne nervously replies that she has no topic of conversation, while internally wondering if Ethan would be embarrassed if he were in her shoes. Daphne, slightly embarrassed, wonders why Ethan is looking at her so intently, not forgetting that she is the Empress. Her answer was short and concise, which surprises her. Ethan admits that he finds Daphne interesting. His words leave her perplexed and surprised. Daphne's internal monologue shows her confusion and questions about the meaning of Ethan's words. She clearly does not expect such a confession. Daphne reflects on the fact that his naive answer deprives her of any desire to argue, and his smile emphasizes his sincerity. Laura, the head maid, notices that Ethan is handsome and that all the maids are in love with him. This fact adds to the comical nature of the situation. Daphne goes on to reflect that although Ethan is attractive, he is too careless for serious conversation. She assumes that Ethan is here for a reason, but for a purpose, as she cautiously sips her tea from her cup. Daphne, with a serious expression on her face, asks Ethan a direct question about what he wants, emphasizing the importance of the moment. Daphne, hearing the laughter, wonders why Ethan is laughing so suddenly, recalling his origins from House Green. Ethan continues to laugh, reflecting on the fact that this man is from nobility, but his manners are completely inappropriate. Ethan admits that he is here because he needs something, clearly having ulterior motives behind his visit. Daphne apologizes, noting that usually people ask about Heath and not her, showing her confusion. Ethan, with a slight chuckle, replies that he's heard about her reclusive life and didn't expect her to know little about him. He leans toward Daphne and says he has come to offer her a gift, addressing her as Her Highness. Daphne, reassuring him, remarks that there is a standard procedure for gifts, expressing her officialism. Ethan, responding cheerfully, says that the standard procedure only applies to material gifts and his offer is special. He extends his hand, stating that he is offering his services as a personal tactician, bringing intrigue into the conversation. Ethan explains that his goal is to help Daphne bond with His Highness, concluding his offer with sincerity and warmth. Daphne is shocked to hear the suggestion of a personal tactic, her ear barely catching the statement. She abruptly stops the speaker with a gesture of her hand, expressing her displeasure and surprise. Looking into the eyes of her interlocutor, Daphne declares that she is seeing him for the first time. She is surprised by the strangeness of the offer from the stranger to become her personal tactician. She feels that the offer is a mistake or a joke. She doesn't see how someone who can't concentrate in the presence of the Empress could be of any use. Her look is judgmental and elicits laughter from the surrounding maids who can't contain their emotions. Ethan asks with a confident smile if she doesn't trust him. His self-assurance only reinforces her doubts about his reliability and professionalism, adding to her displeasure. Daphne replies that she really doesn't trust him, finding him unreliable. She is calm and cold as she sips from her cup, showing her unwavering determination and skepticism. She internally ponders how she can trust someone with such a low attachment scale. Ethan's attachment score barely reaches 15%, which is an obvious disadvantage to her. Focusing on the conversation, Daphne decides to find out Ethan's true motives and asks him why he wants to help her. Her distrust and suspicion grows with every word he says. Ethan laughs, replying that he himself doesn't know why he wants to help, it just sounds fun. Daphne becomes angry, feeling like she's being played or entertained. She accuses Ethan of wanting to use her for his amusement. Daphne thinks this is arrogance and doesn't hide her resentment, her eyes sparkling with anger. Suddenly, Ethan offers to help her, adding that no one will love her at the request of the maids or Moss. His words strike her as sarcastic and cause her even more resentment, emphasizing his certainty that he is right. Ethan, the eldest son of House Green and Heath's personal tactician, asserts himself with confidence, causing surprise among those present. He does so against the backdrop of a beautiful flower garden where rose petals are falling, adding a romantic touch to his statement. Ethan confirms his secret job by hiding it from those around him, making the situation even more intriguing. He says this while squinting his eyes, as if testing the reactions of those listening to him and reaffirming his determination in keeping secrets. Daphne, looking at Ethan, suspects him of deception based on his appearance and behavior, but cannot pinpoint his intentions. She looks pensive and wary, her golden eyes penetrating the very essence of Ethan's words. Ethan guesses Daphne's doubts by making a sarcastic remark that adds to her suspicions and makes her wonder about his sincerity. He lifts his shoulders in a carefree gesture, creating the image of a man with nothing to hide. Daphne recalls hearing about Daphne Karras's dignity and cheerfulness, wondering how these qualities manifested themselves at her wedding. Her thoughts flicker with doubt and admiration at the same time, emphasized by her pensive expression. At her wedding, Daphne shows courage and determination, which earns the respect of those around her and makes her image even more striking. She smiles surrounded by flowers, radiating joy and confidence in her actions. Ethan, watching Daphne's reaction, finds her interesting and declares that he doesn't need her help, which perplexes her. He does so with a slight chuckle that emphasizes his confidence in his abilities and intentions. He asks if she has heard about the rumor circulating in the capital, which hints at her active participation in the events. The question sounds provocative, as if Ethan expects her to make a frank confession or react to something important. Ethan notes that the rumors of her being alone at the wedding ceremony are confirmed reality and are no longer just gossip. He does this with a thoughtful expression on his face, as if to confirm that the rumors are based on real events. He adds that since then, there have only been rumors surrounding Daphne, and many have high hopes for her, emphasizing her importance. Daphne, hearing this, thinks about her role and responsibility, her face taking on a serious expression. Daphne looked thoughtfully at Ethan's hand, reminding herself that His Highness had not only left her alone, but had invited her to dinner first. It was an unexpected show of attention she couldn't ignore. Ethan, realizing how difficult it was to start something new, offered Daphne his help. He knew that her expectations, like others, were high and offered his support to meet them. Daphne watched him coldly, pondering his words. She couldn't understand his true motivation, but she knew one thing. If he was right, she would have to accept his offer. Looking out at the blooming gardens, Daphne realized that she had no other options. She accepted Ethan's offer, realizing it was her only chance to survive and achieve her goals. Meanwhile, the townspeople were discussing her, puzzled as to why the Empress was still not banished, even after conducting the wedding alone. This fact continued to be the main topic of conversation. While discussing Daphne, people also mentioned her recent dinners with the Emperor, further increasing the amount of rumors and gossip in the city. The townspeople continued to discuss her actions, recalling that they had recently seen her on a walk with the Emperor, causing even more speculation about her situation. Meanwhile, Zuria, hidden under her hood, tried not to draw attention to herself as she listened to people talk about her. She knew that the Emperor's true feelings for her remained a mystery. A merchant seeing her admired her taste, noting that her bracelet was very popular. Daphne only smiled in response, realizing that her true goal was still far from being achieved. Reflecting on her path, Zuria remembered what she liked about the bracelet she had chosen. Goldfish, she thought as she immersed herself in her thoughts and made plans for the future. Daphne and Zuria witnessed the appearance of a mysterious object, which leaves them perplexed and surprised. They wonder if this is really happening in real life. Zuria looks closely at what is happening, trying to see if her eyes are deceiving her. Daphne and Zuria are concerned that the event they witnessed will soon become the subject of rumors. They are anxious to make sure that no one was hurt and no one saw anything. Daphne warns Zuria that the rumors could affect their reputations and plans. Zuria reassures Daphne that everything is fine, saying that there is no better place for such incidents in a crowded square, while hiding her excitement. She assures her friend that the most important thing now is to stay calm and not attract attention. Zuria shows confidence, saying that rumors will only start spreading if they want them to, implying that they have a plan. She holds up a bracelet that symbolizes their arrangements and secrets, a reminder of the importance of their mission. Daphne confirms with a smile that the most important thing is for everyone to talk about her, giving the impression of a confident and self-assured person. She knows that any rumor can be a powerful tool if used correctly, and that gives her confidence. Zuria thinks of how rumors about her will sweep across Kialan, overshadowing the current ruler and magnifying her own importance. Her ambitions are great, and she is willing to take any chance to achieve her goals, even if it requires playing by the rules of intrigue. She realizes that the news will soon reach Hisa, and it's only a matter of time before the whole world knows of her return and influence. Her eyes are full of determination and anticipation, for she is ready for any challenge on the way to her goal. Daphne prepares for her first meeting with Hiss in 10 years, anticipating his reaction to her return and her changed circumstances. With many scenarios swirling in her mind, she carefully crafts every word and gesture to make a lasting impression. Now that she has become the center of attention, she needs to find the right dress to make the right impression and assert her status. She realizes that appearance is key, and her outfit must reflect her new strength and confidence. Daphne is perplexed to learn of the banquet, and her thoughts are captured by the question of why it is being held. She is surprised and a little confused, as no one has ever told her about such an event before, and she has to improvise. Moss explains to Daphne that her presence is required at the banquet as Prince Aaron will be there. He notes the importance of the event and emphasizes that her attendance will make a big difference to everyone there. Moss apologizes for not warning Daphne in advance, as the prince's visit was unexpected. He tries to soften the situation by explaining that he himself found out about the visit just hours before their conversation. He also reveals that he has already alerted Luna, who will bring a dress for Daphne, in which she is to appear at the banquet. Moss adds that the dress was chosen specifically for the event and should be perfect for her status. Daphne is surprised that she already has many dresses for formal events, but Moss insists on following His Majesty's orders. He assures her that it's not just an order, but an opportunity to stand out and impress those in attendance. Daphne remembers that she hasn't seen Prince Aaron since their walk in the garden maze 2 days ago, which causes her anxiety. Her thoughts return to the moments when she felt his presence and warmth, and it causes her to have mixed feelings. Realizing that she still has to go to the banquet, Daphne comforts herself with the thought that she is not doomed and the situation is not so hopeless. She tries to put herself in a positive frame of mind, remembering how important such events are to her social status. Moss apologizes for bothering her, but Daphne accepts the situation with a smile and agrees to wear a new dress. Her smile reassures Moss, who in turn is relieved to see her willingness to participate. Moss expresses his satisfaction and asks Daphne to get some rest before the upcoming event. He emphasizes that her fresh look and good mood will be key elements of success at the banquet. Thus, Daphne prepares for the banquet with new thoughts and feelings, accepting the inevitability of her participation in an important event. She finds the strength and determination to represent herself and her family with dignity at this important event. Laura bursts into the room upon seeing the uninvited guest and exclaims indignantly what Moss is doing here. Her gaze is determined and suspicious, and the door slams shut behind her. The air in the room is instantly filled with tension. Daphne is shocked and doesn't understand why Her Majesty has invited her to dinner again. Her eyes reflect confusion and incomprehension. Her face turns red with surprise, and she is clearly trying to figure out what is going on. Laura points to Daphne, asking with a reproachful tone in her voice about the reason for the re-invitation. She is clearly disturbed by the unexpected development. There is anxiety in her voice, and fear for the future of her mistress is reflected on her face. Daphne calms Laura, assuring her that her sudden appearance scares her to death. Her voice is full of sarcasm, but there is a touch of sincerity in it. She takes Laura's hand, trying to convey to her that everything is under control. Daphne smiles as she tells Laura that she's been told to wear a new dress for the upcoming banquet. Her face lights up with joy and anticipation, and her eyes sparkle with joy. She is looking forward to the event, confident of its significance. Laura is puzzled and confesses that she has heard nothing about any banquet. Her eyes express surprise and bewilderment, and her eyebrows rise in wonder. She begins to ponder nervously why such important information was kept from her. Laura speculates that perhaps the banquet is being kept secret to avoid unnecessary noise. Her face becomes pensive and serious. She starts going over in her head the possible reasons for such secrecy, trying to find a logical explanation. Daphne informs Laura that Prince Arana will be attending the banquet. Laura instantly tenses upon hearing the name, her face darkening with anxiety. She knows of the prince's reputation and begins to worry for Daphne's safety at the event. Laura cautiously mentions that Prince Arana has a certain reputation. Daphne listens to her warily and attentively. Laura tries not to escalate the situation, but her voice shakes with excitement when she talks about it. Daphne tells her that Prince Arana is known as a womanizer, chasing after any woman, be it an empress or a countess. Her face is full of anxiety for the future of the event. She fears that the prince may disrupt the festivities with his actions. The maid Laura warns Daphne to be careful, expressing her concern for her safety and well-being. She worries for her mistress, realizing all the possible dangers that could be waiting for her. Laura promises to always be there to support Daphne in her time of need. She asks that Daphne seek her help if any problems arise. This demonstrates their close and trusting relationship. Daphne decides to overcome the fear she feels in this body. Her eyes are full of determination, and she realizes that she has an uphill battle against her inner demons to gain strength and confidence. Banquet day. Hiss reflects on how long it has been since he has seen the Empress. He worries about her condition as it has been a long time since they last met. His thoughts are preoccupied with her safety and well-being. He recalls that the Empress has never attended a social gathering. This will be her first appearance at such an event, and Hissa realizes how important this is to her and to the entire court. Hiss decides that he needs to keep a better eye on the Empress. He realizes his responsibility and the need to protect her from any threats. His resolve grows, and he is ready to act. However, he feels that he should not offer her his hand. Hiss doubts how the Empress will react to his support, but he is still willing to stand by her side and help her in any situation. Hiss ponders if the Empress would agree to dance if he asked her. His thoughts are full of doubts and hopes. He wants to understand how she feels and how she feels about him. The butler Moss informs Heath that Her Highness is waiting for him. Heath realizes that he should not keep the Empress waiting. He is ready for the meeting and wants to show her his respect and support. Moss admires Luna's efforts in preparing the outfits. He notes that Luna did his best this time and points it out approvingly. The butler seems as pleased as ever. Heath wonders what Moss is talking about, not immediately understanding his hints. The butler clarifies that it's about the outfit for the banquet, which piques Heath's curiosity. Heath continues the conversation by clarifying that Luna has prepared outfits for both of them, much to the butler's satisfaction. Moss is proud of the work done and the results. Moss explains that he gave the dress to the Empress as a gesture of apology. This is an important gesture symbolizing his remorse and his desire to make amends to the Empress. Hiss admits that he soiled the Empress's dress in the garden maze. He feels guilty for what happened and wants to make amends by admitting his mistakes. Moss, smiling slightly, asks if there is no other reason for the gift. Heath assures him that it is the only reason and tries to convince Moss of his honesty and sincerity. Daphne, seeing them, approaches and says they are ready to go. She emphasizes her readiness for the banquet, excited about the upcoming event and maintaining the atmosphere of solemnity. Suddenly, Heath's mood lifts and he feels more confident. He begins to understand the importance of dressing up and realizes that it is a sign of recognition and respect for him. Daphne offers Heath a path to the banquet hall, showing him the way. He politely thanks her for her help and support, sensing Daphne's warmth and attention. Heath ponders why his mood has improved since meeting Daphne and notices that he smiles as he thinks of her. This smile reflects his inner changes and new feelings. Crown Prince Louis III's presence at the banquet causes a stir among the guests, who discuss that he will be the star of the evening. Many of them have heard of the prince, and his arrival raises many questions. Guests are perplexed as to why Crown Prince Louis III decided to attend the banquet today. They are trying to figure out what could be the reason for his unexpected visit. One guest suggests that since the prince arrived, there must have been a good reason. They find it strange that His Majesty allowed the Crown Prince entry and held a banquet in his honor. Moss solemnly announces the arrival of Crown Prince Louis III. This attracts the attention of all the guests, and excitement ensues in the hall. Moss apologizes to His Majesty and explains that the Emperor is a little delayed because he wants to arrive with Her Highness. The guests discuss that Prince Louis III will indeed arrive with Her Highness, which causes surprise and curiosity. One of the guests remarks that the night is still young and they have plenty of time ahead of them to enjoy this important event. The other guests discuss that the Empress may indeed be different from the others, and this may explain the Emperor's behavior. Guests point out that His Majesty has not appeared in public with a lady since the previous Emperor and Empress died. This fuels interest and rumors among those present. One of the guests recalls that there were rumors of the Emperor and the lady dining together, and they now believe that these rumors may be true. The situation at the banquet becomes increasingly intriguing. An important event is taking place in the castle, and Daphne, the purple-haired Empress, addresses the man beside her, telling him that he can return to his chambers if he feels uncomfortable. She expresses her concern and support. Daphne warns her companion that the Prince of Oran, Louis, is not the best man, and so he must be careful. Her words are full of care and genuine concern for the well-being of her loved ones. Suddenly, His Majesty Emperor Hais and Her Highness Empress Daphne enter the hall. Their appearance elicits admiration and respect from all present, and the atmosphere becomes solemn. Daphne meets the other nobles and greets them. She radiates grace and dignity, confirming her high position. Her greetings elicit smiles and respect from those around her. The Empress responds to the greetings with mutual courtesy. She is pleased to be recognized and respected, even if it is only a formality. Her smile shines with warmth and kindness. Louis, Prince of Arana, approaches Daphne and expresses his pleasure at seeing her. His words are full of hidden innuendo and a smile that makes Daphne wary. Louis introduces himself and notes that they have not met before. His confident and slightly cocky smile emphasizes his self-assurance and his desire to flirt with the Empress. Daphne begins to tire of the Empress's constant greetings and wonders how much longer this will go on. Her weariness is evident in her face, but she tries to keep her composure. Louis laughs and emphasizes that it is impossible to ignore the beloved Emperor Pianthus. His words are full of hidden subtext and a hint of his desire to draw attention to himself. Daphne ponders who in their right mind would dare to flirt with the Empress. Her anxiety and suspicion grows, but she decides to observe Louis and his intentions. Louis could not put into words how delighted he was with the banquet given in his honor. He gently held the Empress's hand, savoring the moment. His gaze shone with joy and gratitude for such a warm welcome. Louis was impressed by the meeting with Empress Daphne that everyone around him was talking about. He gently kissed her hand, expressing his respect and delight. The moment was filled with sincerity and admiration. Louis realized that today was apparently his birthday. He smiled as he held the Empress's hand and felt special. The festive atmosphere around him only increased his joy. Daphne apologized for any inconvenience this might have caused, saying the words with the utmost respect and reverence. Her hand, from which the shawl was removed, was a gesture of apology and sincerity. Daphne confessed that she had not much experience in social gatherings, and Louis's kindness flattered her. She rubbed her hands together gently, trying to calm her excitement. Her honesty and openness created an atmosphere of trust. She added that she and His Majesty had not yet had their first kiss, which surprised Louis. His reaction was mixed, ranging from surprise to slight confusion. Her words hurt him. Louis, feeling that he had gone too far, apologized for his behavior. He realized that his actions could have been taken the wrong way and decided to be more careful in the future. Daphne suggested that Louis enjoy the banquet, inviting him to join in the festivities. Her voice was full of warmth and friendliness, creating an atmosphere of joy and ease. Emperor Hiss, who had invited Daphne, apologized for any possible inconvenience. He was glad for her presence and hoped she would enjoy the evening. His sincerity and concern were evident. Heath noted that Daphne's act was quite commendable. He smiled, proud of her courage and openness. The evening continued, and all the guests enjoyed the festive atmosphere and each other's company. Daphne stood before Emperor Hiss, who admiringly remarked on her grace and dignity, comparing her to a true empress. At this time, Daphne looked away thoughtfully, pondering his words. While walking through the flowering garden, Hiss asked Daphne what she had said about the first kiss. Daphne was embarrassed and blushed slightly, her thoughts muddled as she tried to recall her words. Thinking back on the conversation, Daphne was surprised when Heath asked if she had really saved herself for her first kiss with him. Her heart beat faster, and she felt a slight thrill of excitement. Suddenly, Louis appeared with a bright smile on his face. He surprised Daphne by asking her why she was so surprised since he had been calling her for a long time. His ease and friendliness diffused the situation a bit. A little later, Louis approached Daphne in a more serious manner. His red eyes and dark lighting made his appearance ominous. He asked to speak to her privately, which made her tense. Daphne warily asked Louis what exactly he wanted to talk to her about. She sensed an underlying threat and was prepared for any surprises. At this time, Emperor Hiss, having heard rumors, told Daphne that the crowned prince of Arana had brought spies with him. This message alarmed her, and she tried to make sense of his words. Louis confirmed Hiss's fears as he recounted the rumors circulating in the highest circles. He also added that Prince Arana had always been suspicious of his intentions. Hiss wondered when the Grand Temple and the Supreme Council had become so suspicious. Daphne, on the other hand, noticed that the fifth bride was holding out longer than anyone expected, which added even more intrigue. Heath suggested that it was likely that this bride was also causing discontent among many. Daphne was left pondering, realizing that their world was plunging into new intrigue and danger. Empress Daphne and Emperor Hiss discussed the situation. Hiss believes that Daphne's choice of Charis and the Great Temple could be a great opportunity, to which Daphne agrees, recognizing that the Empress is fully aware of her position. Emperor Hiss realizes that the Great Temple is trying to use the Empress for their own purposes, even sacrificing her. He is concerned about this fact and seeks to make the right decision to protect Daphne. Lord Ethan suggests that the Empress should not be kicked out, as her presence nearby could become an important leverage against the High Council and the Great Temple. This decision requires a measured approach and strategic thinking. Emperor Hiss accepts the need to keep an eye on Aaron's spies at the upcoming banquet. Amidst the political intrigue, every detail can make the difference, and Hiss is determined not to miss a single one. Emperor Hiss advises that if a matter is not urgent, it is best to revisit it later. In the current environment, every decision must be carefully considered and reasoned. Louis, Prince of Aran, is concerned that the Empress has not yet answered his question. This makes him feel disappointed and disrespected by the Empire's treatment of the honored guests. He is unhappy with this attitude. Louis expresses his disappointment. noting that such treatment of the guests of honor is unacceptable. His grievances sound rather pointed, which adds tension to the situation. Emperor Hai's replies cryptically that perhaps he will notify the Empress of who Louis is looking for. Prince Arana is not pleased with this answer and realizes that the Emperor is not about to relent. Louis smilingly asks Empress Daphne to dance, adding an element of surprise and romance to a tense situation. His proposal seems sincere, despite the prevailing atmosphere. Daphne politely but firmly refuses Louis's proposal, adding another layer to their complicated relationship. She demonstrates her independence and strength despite political pressure. Daphne, the purple-haired empress, observes the scene, reflecting on the fact that if Heath were not a crowned prince, he would have been banished long ago for such behavior. She realizes the importance of his title, which protects him from consequences. Daphne, holding Prince Louis' hand, realizes that she already had to promise her first dance to His Highness. Heath has probably told her that she can leave at any moment, which makes her anxious and doubtful. Prince Louis looks at Daphne with slight embarrassment, reminding her that she's already taken his first kiss, so he's hoping she'll at least leave him the first dance. This heightens the tension between them, increasing the drama. Heath, looking at Daphne, admits that he is sentimental, and things like this matter a lot to him. He says that he was only going to observe the situation, but circumstances have changed, forcing him to reconsider his plans. Daphne hopes for understanding from Prince Louis, seeing him as an opportunity to accomplish her goals. She believes that using him as a springboard will help her do so, which piques the interest of the audience. With a smile on her face, Daphne approaches His Highness, asking if he will agree to dance with her. Her confidence and beauty impresses those around her, creating an air of anticipation. Hiss replies to Daphne with a slight nod that he will do as she wishes. His calmness and confidence gives her hope for a successful outcome to their conversation and dance. The two observers, surprised by what is happening, question the reality of the situation, wondering if they are awake. Even if they are not asleep, everything that is happening seems unbelievable to them, adding comicality to the situation. Prince Louis, looking tensely into the distance, recalls hearing rumors about the weakness of House Karras's daughter. He wonders if he was duped or if it was misinformation, which makes him even more distrustful of those around him. Prince Louis realizes that Daphne has beaten him to it this time. Perhaps he should still join the Emperor rather than the Grand Temple to maintain his position and influence in the Empire. In a sumptuous hall decorated with gold and lights, Daphne, smiling embarrassedly, confesses that she is not a good dancer. She apologizes for her inability, showing her modesty and insecurity. Heath, responding to her words, notes with a smile that her invitation to dance was unexpected and he was preparing for the worst. This shows his sense of humor and calmness in difficult situations. Daphne anxiously asks if Heath is teasing her. He replies that he can't say no, showing his kindness and willingness to support her. Heath admits that her attempt wasn't so bad. He finds her dance quite satisfactory, which helps Daphne feel more confident and relaxed. He gently suggests that she slowly repeat the moves after him, showing his care and desire to teach her how to dance. This emphasizes his patience and benevolence. Daphne, watching his movements, begins to get used to the dance. She realizes that it is not as difficult as it seemed at first, and her confidence grows. Daphne notes that she is smart and a quick learner. She is proud of her progress, which is evident in her shining eyes and smile. Heath wonders if this was all part of her plan. Daphne confirms this, and her gaze radiates joy and satisfaction at what she has accomplished. Heath notices that the song is ending and wonders if Daphne really has feelings for him. He is surprised by her genuine joy and enjoyment of the dance. Zackle Heath admits that Daphne danced beautifully. Her effort and his encouragement made the moment magical, strengthening their bond and trust in each other. Daphne, embarrassed and flushed, tries to calm down when Heath reminds her that everyone around them is applauding them. She hesitantly repeats the words, clearly under the impression. The situation seems too tense for her, and she doesn't know how to deal with the emotions that have come over her. Daphne pushes Heath away, feeling the need to get out for some fresh air. She hurriedly leaves the room, clearly unable to stand the tension. Her heart races, and she tries to regain her breath, stepping outside. The air seems to be her escape from everything going on inside. Heath, watching her leave, notices that this is not the first time she has run away from lunch. He is surprised by her behavior and puzzles over the reasons why. His gaze becomes thoughtful, and he tries to figure out what could have upset Daphne so much. Her behavior makes him uneasy. Louis is surprised to notice that Heath, usually cold as a rock, has been dancing this time. Heath is embarrassed, but doesn't show it. Louis can't believe his eyes seeing the Emperor show emotion. This new behavior makes him wonder what could have affected Hiss so much. Louis, slightly mocking, asks where Her Highness went, clearly noticing Hiss's confusion and teasing him. He enjoys the moment, seeing the Emperor trying to hide his true feelings. Louis is clearly enjoying this unexpected situation. Heath, holding his glass of wine, speaks thoughtfully of his intention to ask Daphne to a second dance, rebuking Louis for stealing the first one from him. A shadow of sadness appears in his eyes, and he tries to hide his disappointment. Heath feels he has missed an important point. Daphne is tired and has gone to her room, but this raises questions from the rest of the guests since the banquet has just begun. Heath tries to make excuses for her, citing her ill health. It's hard for him to watch the misunderstanding in the eyes of others, but he is determined to defend her honor. He knows that what she really needed was privacy. Louis suspects that Heath is protecting Daphne and bluntly voices his opinion, causing Heath to question his actions and feelings. Louis watches the Emperor's reaction with interest, realizing that there is some truth in what he says. This makes Heath realize the depth of his feelings for Daphne. Heath is concerned that Ethan will reprimand him for not keeping his promise to find the spies, feeling guilty for dancing like a child instead of fulfilling his duties. Heath realizes that he needs to be more responsible and decisive. A girl named Daphne, the Empress, feels confused and embarrassed as she stands under the starry sky. She recalls how she wanted to apologize to Hise, the Emperor, but did not dare. Emperor Hise, surrounded by exquisite decorations, looks at Daphne with a soft smile. He agrees to her request, which surprises and touches her to the core. Daphne, embarrassed and blushing, covers her face with her hands, realizing that Hiss not only agreed, but did so with such kindness. Her heart begins to beat harder. Looking through her fingers, Daphne sees the percentages on the scale rise to 17. She realizes that her actions have had an effect, and it makes her even more excited. She doesn't understand why Heath is being so kind to her. She asks herself this question, looking up at the night sky filled with stars and moon, trying to find the answer. She ponders the reasons for his kindness, speculating that perhaps it has to do with her clumsiness in dancing or other shortcomings. Her thoughts are filled with doubt and uncertainty. Daphne recalls how Heath laughed when she couldn't find her way out of the maze. She realizes that his affection for her is only growing, and it fills her heart with warmth. Realizing that Hiss may be one of those who likes to teach others, she begins to understand his motives. This discovery causes her to have mixed feelings. She ponders his role in controlling everyone around him and thinks that perhaps this is the reason for his attitude towards her. These thoughts cause her to think even deeper. Daphne admits that she hates it when others tell her what to do and how to do it. She sighs as she looks up at the night sky and feels herself beginning to understand Heath and her own feelings for him better. Louis, dressed in a gorgeous red outfit, chats with Daphne, complimenting her eyes. He tries to charm her, but behind his words is the worry that he is looking for spies. Heath, watching Louis, is more concerned about him approaching Daphne. He is annoyed by Louis's insolence and decides to intervene to protect the Empress. Moss asks Heath if he is enjoying the banquet. Heath replies that he is not, showing his displeasure at what is happening. Moss notices this and decides to support the Emperor. Heath remembers the dance with Daphne. He sees that she enjoyed it too, which gives him mixed feelings. He can't afford to show weakness in front of others. Moss, trying to diffuse the tension, suggests that Heath visit the royal doctor, alluding to his poor eyesight. Heath denies the eye problem, claiming that there is nothing wrong with his eyesight. Heath is outraged by Moss's words and demands an explanation as to why he said he enjoyed the dance. Moss is confused but tries to remain calm, realizing that the Emperor is annoyed. Hiss, continuing his conversation with Moss, wonders how he could have enjoyed the dance if it was so bad. His pride is hurt, and he can't accept that anyone would think otherwise. Moss, realizing the seriousness of the situation, replies that he didn't mean anything bad. He tries to reassure Heath, suggesting that he just have his eyesight checked by a doctor. Heath resolutely walks away, ignoring Moss's further attempts to calm him down. His rage is evident, and he is determined to deal with what is going on in the kingdom. Ethan shows up and asks Moss what is going on with Heath. Moss explains that Hiss is looking for him and is worried about the Emperor's condition. Ethan realizes that the situation requires his intervention. Hiss, the young Emperor, is immersed in thoughts about his dance with Daphne, the Empress. He feels in seventh heaven as he dances with her and is overcome with tenderness and excitement. These feelings confuse his thoughts, causing him to wonder what is really going on in his heart. Ethan and Moss discuss Heath's emotional state. They notice that he himself has not yet realized his feelings for Daphne and assume that he is in love. Their conversation is filled with jokes and conjecture, but both realize that the situation is getting serious and needs attention. Heath withdraws into his thoughts and realizes that he has not yet realized that he is falling in love with Daphne. He ponders how this affects his life and decisions. His thoughts become intertwined with his duties as emperor, creating an internal conflict that becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. The emperor can't stop thinking about Daphne. Her image keeps popping up in his thoughts, and he wonders why she has such a profound effect on him. Every moment spent with her leaves a deep imprint, increasing his affection and anxiety. After his father's death and becoming emperor, Heis considered feelings a luxury he couldn't afford. He avoided affection, focusing on his duties. But now, when he meets Daphne, he begins to realize that his heart can no longer remain cold and unapproachable. Heath recalls how he had to defend the throne from those who tried to take it away. He became strong and determined, hiding his true emotions. Each battle, each trial made him tougher. But deep down, he always longed for true love and understanding. The emperor had to stay strong as long as the temple and the high council were around. He realizes that he had many reasons to hide his feelings. But now that Daphne has come into his life, he begins to wonder if it's worth it to continue living in such tension. Daphne, with her purple hair, turns out to be nothing like her file says she is. She is emotional and complex, which attracts Heath even more. Her extraordinary charisma and depth of soul mesmerize him, causing a storm of feelings and desires that he cannot suppress. Heath recalls how Daphne drew close to him, but remained at a distance. She was malleable, but stern, which made her even more mysterious and attractive. Her behavior, her words, all leave an indelible mark on his heart, causing him to constantly return to thoughts of her. Heath wonders if dancing with Daphne was as enjoyable as he thought it would be. Her smile and mannerisms leave a deep imprint on his heart, and he realizes that he can't ignore his feelings for her. Every movement she makes, every touch fills his heart with a warmth and tenderness he hasn't felt in a long time. Daphne, smiling enchantingly, confidently offers His Highness to dance with her. She holds his hand, showing her determination and charm. Heath is surprised by her confidence and agrees, although many feelings are raging inside him. Daphne boldly begins to dance with Heath, but suddenly shyness overwhelms her. She quickly averts her eyes, and her confidence begins to melt. Heath notices her sudden shyness and asks why she is suddenly so shy despite her confident invitation. As Daphne backs away, Hiss ponders why she approached only to run away. His gaze is full of bewilderment and slight disappointment. He tries to understand her actions and emotions, filling the space between them with his own confusion. Hiss stands under the starry sky, thinking aloud. If Daphne were here, he would ask her many questions. His thoughts are filled with her image, and he longs for her presence. The sky above him seems to reflect his confusion and sadness. Suddenly Daphne appears in front of Hiss. She smiles gently and asks if he has called for her. Her appearance seems to dissolve the tension in the air. Heath is surprised and delighted at the same time, unable to believe his eyes. His heart beats faster at her proximity. Ethan, with concern in his voice, calls out to Heath, mentioning Aaron's spies. Heath flinches in surprise. Thoughts of possible threats and dangers rush through his mind. He feels he must protect Daphne at all costs, despite all obstacles. Hiss, uttering Daphne's name, notices her instantaneous appearance. His surprise and joy are intertwined into one. Daphne looks at him with deep feeling, and in her eyes reads the answer to all his questions. She is here by his side, and that's what matters. Daphne thinks it was Heath who called out to her. Her voice is full of doubt, but there is hope in her heart. She looks at him expectantly, hoping to hear something important from him. Her feelings are mixed, but she is ready for any answer. Deciding she was just imagining things, Daphne turns around and walks away. Her heart grows heavy at the thought that she could have been wrong. She tries to hide her pain, but her steps slow and she looks back at Heath as if expecting him to stop her. Ethan, concerned about Heath's condition, asks if he's lost his mind. His eyes are full of anxiety and incomprehension. Heath, immersed in his own thoughts and feelings, looks at his friend in silence. He realizes that he must make a choice that will change their lives. Ethan approaches Heath and sees that he looks exhausted. Heath admits that he has been overstressed in the last few days. Ethan, concerned about his friend's condition, tries to figure out what happened. Heath tells Ethan that he doesn't feel well. Ethan supports him, trying to understand what happened. Heath feels worse and worse, which causes Ethan even more concern. Heath is breathing heavily and says he can't breathe. Ethan is in a panic, trying to find a way to help him. Heath's condition continues to worsen. Panic begins to set in the city. People notice that something is wrong with the Emperor. They don't understand what is happening and begin to worry about his health. Zaria and Laura discuss the situation. Zaria says that the Emperor recently danced with the Empress. Laura can't believe that the Emperor, who has always been so strong, is in such a state. Zaria and Laura continue to discuss the incident. Laura tells them that the Empress may have magical powers. This adds to the mystery of the situation. Daphne hears their conversation and intervenes. She says that the Emperor has become ill because of the curse. Everyone begins to wonder who could have put this curse on him and why. Daphne tries to explain the situation to Laura, but she does not believe that nothing special has happened. Laura believes that the Empress is hiding something. Daphne admits that everything happened because of the crowned prince who tried to overthrow Hiss. She says that the prince poisoned Hissa in order to seize the throne. Daphne is determined to find a way to save Heath and bring order back to the kingdom. She realizes that there are many challenges ahead, but she is willing to fight for her lover. Daphne, enjoying the morning light, asks with a smile if she can have breakfast already, and her joy becomes contagious. She lightly touches the colorful salad in front of her, and the bright rays of light play on her face, emphasizing the happiness of this moment. Moss, watching Daphne, nods with approval and, clearing his throat, agrees to tell her the news after breakfast. Daphne gratefully accepts his words, her eyes sparkling with curiosity and joy. Daphne ponders what she should ask this time. She realizes that she won't be able to uncover important intrigues without significant possessions, and is slightly saddened, but then decides to focus on less serious topics. Her thoughts are directed to matters of etiquette in Erin or relations with neighboring empires. Memories of recent events cause mild anxiety, but Daphne decides to use this time to learn something new. The butler, noticing the slight worry in Daphne's eyes, cautiously suggests she see the imperial physician. Daphne assures him that she feels fine, trying not to show her excitement. But Moss is not reassured, recalling that earlier Daphne had complained of difficulty breathing. He anxiously watches her, trying to convince her that a medical examination is necessary. Heath, who enters the room, ironically remarks that the words about health might just be a joke. He looks at Daphne with a slight smile, but his eyes are full of concern. Daphne admits that she talked about her condition out of boredom, hoping it would lighten things up a bit. Moss, on the other hand, continues to insist on the need for a medical examination, his voice sounding anxious. Heath, remembering that Daphne hasn't complained about her health since her ascension to the throne, is inclined to think that her words may just be an excuse for attention. He watches her with bewilderment. His heart skips a beat when he realizes that Daphne's uneasiness is caused by her presence in a certain place. Thoughts of her safety and well-being fill him with anxiety, and he decides to take measures to protect the Empress. Hiss wonders in surprise if Daphne didn't hear his words. He repeats that it doesn't matter, but suspects that his words may not have reached her. His voice sounds disgruntled and tired, reflecting the inner tension he feels at the moment. Moss, the butler, expresses concern about Heath's condition and asks him to let him know if the symptoms return. He looks serious and concerned, trying not to show his excitement. Moss knows that it is his duty to care for his master, and he is willing to do whatever he can for his well-being. Moss is relieved to see that Heath is pleased with himself today. He smiles slightly at the thought of the progress in Heath's condition. The joy in his eyes can't hide the slight shadow of worry, but he has faith that everything will be all right. His thoughts return to the recent conversation that gave him hope. Inwardly worried, Moss wonders how to make Heath realize the importance of what is happening. He ponders his next move, realizing that a mistake could cost too much. A plan of action emerges in his mind that he hopes to put into action as soon as possible. A young servant informs Moss that Lady Zuria Sepian has requested an audience with the Emperor and Empress. Moss is surprised by this news and begins to wonder about the reason for the visit. He realizes that there may be something important behind it and decides to prepare carefully for the meeting. Daphne, hearing Zuria Sepian's name, wonders what could have prompted her to come. She is wary and yet interested at the same time. Memories of past encounters with this woman flash through her mind, and she tries to figure out what Zuria's intentions might be. The Empress tries to remember where she has heard the name before. It seems familiar to her, but she can't immediately recall the details. Daphne's thoughts return to the events surrounding the name, and she realizes that Zuria may have important information. Hiss ponders what he should tell Daphne. He is perplexed as to why Zuria wants the meeting, what could be behind it. His mind analyzes the possible reasons, and he decides to discuss it with Daphne to find an answer together. Daphne replies that Zuria wants to welcome them back to the Pyant Empire. She tries to understand Zuria's true intentions without showing her wariness. Her heart is mixed with feelings of joy and anxiety as she is unsure of what to expect. Daphne informs her that Zuria was originally a citizen of the Pyant Empire, but married an Iranian. This raises further questions and suspicions in her mind. She realizes that this visit could have serious consequences and decides to prepare for possible surprises. The servant is happy to report that now that Zuria has returned home, she may want to befriend those around her, especially after yesterday's event. He sincerely hopes so, expressing his joy and hope. Zuria wonders if Daphne is in the garden. Laura confirms that she is and offers to escort her out. It can be seen that Laura is trying to be as courteous and obliging as possible. Daphne realizes that Zuria will insist on seeing her even if she refuses. Her thoughts express some surprise and bewilderment at this insistence on Zuria's part. Remembering Zuria Sepian's name, Daphne realizes that it is not only part of her memories, but that she herself has heard the name somewhere before. She begins to connect the scraps of information. Daphne feels that Zuria is an important figure, although she cannot remember where she heard the name. She tries to realize the significance of Zuria in her life and why she seems familiar. Zuria greets Daphne cheerfully, expressing her emotional openness and friendliness. Her greeting is filled with genuine joy, which evokes warm feelings in Daphne and makes her feel welcome. Daphne recalls that Zuria's name was mentioned in the diary. She realizes that this meeting is not accidental and that her role in Zuria's life is significant. Daphne respectfully introduces herself as Empress Daphne Karis. Her face glows with kindness and openness, ready to make new acquaintances and perhaps renew old ties. Daphne invites Zuria to sit down, offering her a seat next to her. Zuria thanks her, accepting the invitation with a smile. Their meeting becomes the beginning of a new relationship and possibly an important alliance. Daphne realizes that the mention of Zuria's name in the diary is not accidental. She sees it as an important sign and feels that their meeting will have a significant impact on the future. Zuria shines in the sunlight, her beauty striking all who see her. She is compared to the epitome of the ideal, noticeably superior to any noblewoman ever met. Empress Daphne appears before Zuria with an angelic appearance. Zuria smiles embarrassed and says that she heard she wanted to say hello, showing courtesy and respect for the Empress. Zuria thanks Daphne for her time, despite the suddenness of her appearance. Her sincerity and friendliness is felt in every word, which is sympathetic. Daphne replies that she felt it was right to meet with Zuria first before going to His Majesty. Her calmness and nobility emphasize her status and confidence. Zuria, realizing the significance of the meeting, expresses her gratitude, calling it an honor. She admires the nobility and majesty of the Empress, her devotion evident in every gesture. Suddenly, however, something strange happens inside Zuria. Her affection scale for Daphne shows 0%, despite outward signs of admiration and respect. If she hadn't seen the scale, she would be sure that she likes Daphne, but inner contradictions and confusion make her question the authenticity of her feelings. Daphne notices her doubts and says that she heard that Zuria has been traveling. Her words should have strengthened their bond, but Zuria is still in thought. Zuria confirms that she has lived in Aaron for the past 10 years. She is open and honest in her answers, trying to show her loyalty and respect. Despite her outward admiration, inside Zuria remains misunderstanding and anxiety due to her zero attachment scale. Her thoughts and feelings become intertwined, leaving her at a loss. Zuria said that she often came to the imperial palace and spent a lot of time in the garden, playing amongst the flowers and greenery. She recalled those days with a smile, savoring the memories. Daphne is perplexed, asking if Zuria is talking about the imperial garden as if she can't believe it was possible. She looks suspiciously at her interlocutor, trying to understand her motives. Zuria confirms that she was indeed taken to the imperial garden, and she is clearly happy about the memory. However, her joy seems somewhat strange, as if she is hiding something behind that smile. Daphne, upon learning that Zuria now calls someone His Highness, begins to realize that the situation is much more complicated than it seemed. She ponders her next course of action, hiding her emotions. Daphne suspects that Zuria was close to the Emperor and was even his friend. This fact makes her nervous and wary of her interlocutor. Zuria confirms that she was good friends with the Emperor along with Hiss and Ethan. Her voice sounds carefree, which makes Daphne even more suspicious, who cannot understand Zuria's true intentions. Daphne ponders why Zuria is so naive and keeps calling the Emperor Hiss. She tries to understand the meaning behind her words and how it affects the current situation. She thinks that Zuria is either very naive and has no bad intentions, or on the contrary, she's hiding something important and doesn't feel the need to share it. Daphne comes to the conclusion that Zuria may be a psychopath who is completely unconcerned about other people's feelings and deliberately makes her suspicious and distrustful. Despite Zuria's friendly tone, Daphne cannot fully trust her. She notices that Zuria's trust scale remains at 0, and this bothers her because even those who despise her have a higher scale. Zuria, smiling and looking into the distance, remembers how exciting it is to think about her upcoming meeting with Hiss after 10 years of separation. Her heart beats faster at the mere thought of it. She anticipates the moment when she will finally see him again, imagining how their world has changed over the years. The meeting with Daphne, the Empress, begins with a question. Daphne wonders if Zuria asked for the meeting out of curiosity. Zuria admits that she was curious about the kind of person Daphne has become. She hopes that their conversation will help shed light on the many questions that have accumulated over the years of separation. Daphne, still smiling demurely, wonders what Zuria thinks of her now. Zuria confesses that her concern was unfounded. She feels that a new page is opening in their conversation, full of understanding and trust. Daphne, with a slight smile on her face, asks what exactly was causing Zuria's anxiety. Zuria explains that she had heard rumors of the Emperor's wedding. Her words carry anxiety and hope at the same time, for the truth is sometimes hidden behind the veil of rumors. Daphne explains that rumors can be false and true. She laughs, reminding her that the Emperor has already apologized and everything is fine. Zuria is relieved by these words because it's not just the truth that matters, but the sincerity of the apology. Zuria notes that she is pleased to know of Daphne's kind heart. She feels relieved and happy to understand. This moment brings them closer together, setting the stage for future friendships and mutual respect. Moss, the butler, announces that His Highness is ready to receive Zuria. She greets him cheerfully, calling him by name. There is joy and excitement in her voice as the meeting with Hiss grows closer and more real. Zuria shares with Moss that it has been 10 years since their last meeting with Hiss, and she is very excited. Her heart is overflowing with emotion. She remembers all the moments they had together and hopes that their bond hasn't broken down with time. The butler leads Zuria to the meeting place, and she is excited to finally see Hissa. There is a glint of hope and joy in her eyes. She imagines how not only Heath has changed over the years, but also herself. Emotions overwhelm Zuria as she realizes that her expectations will finally be met. She is ready for the long-awaited reunion after years of separation. Her heart beats faster and faster, and each step brings her closer to her cherished goal. Zuria, apologizing to Empress Daphne, says it is time for her to leave. She feels embarrassed and slightly sad, but still decides to leave despite the possible consequences. Daphne stays where she is, holding back her emotions, and expresses her hope for a new meeting. Daphne smiles against the backdrop of blooming roses and says that she hopes to meet again in the future. Her words sound warm and sincere, creating a sense of closeness and friendship between the two women. Zuria realizes that their connection is important to both of them. Zuria reflects on how unfamiliar it is to call Hisa His Highness. She wonders if he is doing well. Her thought expresses concern and care for the man who has become significant to her. Moss, the butler, confirms that Hiss is now the emperor and is being watched closely. His calm tone and confidence make it clear that change is inevitable and Hiss must conform to his new position. Hiss meets Zuria, and his face reflects a mixture of surprise and joy, as if he has been waiting for this meeting. Zuria feels her heart fill with warmth from this moment, realizing that their meeting is important to both of them. Zuria, with a smile on her face, notes how much time has passed since their last meeting. She wonders if it's been 10 years. Hissy looks serious and focused, which makes her wonder about the changes in their lives. Zuria jokingly points out that Heath didn't even offer her a seat. He, excusing himself, explains that he has a lot of work to do. There is an air of busyness and responsibility in the room, reflecting his new status. Zuria notices that his is no longer the boy she remembers. His face has become serious and devoid of its former naivete. She realizes that she is facing an adult and responsible person. The image of young Hisa, who was always smiling and happy to be alive, comes back to her mind. Now his face does not reflect his former emotions, and this makes Zuria feel nostalgic and regretful. Hiss has become the consummate emperor, uncompromising and tough. His face reflects a strength and determination that frightens and delights at the same time. Zuria realizes that before her stands a man who has changed forever, and his rule will be just as strict and just. Zuria, with golden hair standing in the library, ponders how she should properly address Hisu, whether to call him Your Highness or something else. In the sunlight streaming into the room, she seems even more beautiful and mysterious. Hiss, looking reserved and serious, replies that she should observe decorum in the presence of others. At this point, Zuria smiles, realizing that alone with him she can address him as she used to. Zuria recalls the times when she and Hiss were friends. She asks him about it, standing among the bright sunflowers, and feels a warm wave of memories of those carefree days. In her thought, Zuria realizes that despite Hisa's changed outward behavior, he is still the same man inside. She appreciates him for his masculinity and inner strength, noticing how he struggles to maintain control over his emotions. Zuria admits to herself that she likes Heath's masculinity, and this brings a slight smile to her face. Suddenly, Heath leaves, and she anxiously asks where he is going, feeling uneasy and uncertain. At that moment, Daphne with purple hair enters the hall, accompanied by Laura. Daphne says she is heading to the library, to which Laura asks in surprise why she needs to go there now. Daphne explains that there is an important book in the library that she needs to find. She recalls the mysterious diary and that it may contain information about Zuria, which further strengthens her resolve. An image of a red diary against a background of golden patterns appears before her eyes. She doesn't know who the diary belongs to, but she is certain that it mentions Zuria, and that could be a clue. Daphne ponders why Laura hates her. She wonders if this hatred is due to jealousy of Hiss, or if Laura really feels hatred because of her personal mental problems. Daphne begins to realize that Laura's level of sympathy for her is zero, and it may have something to do with her feelings for Heath. She tries to find answers in the diary, hoping to uncover all the secrets and understand the true motives of those around her. Daphne, worried, wandered around the library, obviously looking for something. Her tension was evident in her gestures and facial expression. She was sure that the right thing must be somewhere nearby. With surprise, Daphne realized that the thing she was looking for had disappeared. Her voice shook with bewilderment. She was sure she had seen it right here, but now she couldn't find it. Ethan, appearing unexpectedly, took an interest in Daphne's search. He was genuinely intrigued by her concern and asked what exactly she was looking for, hoping to help. The servant burst into the library with obvious concern. He turned anxiously to Daphne, questioning what had happened and why she was so alarmed. Ethan found the item in question. and was surprised that Daphne was still doing it. He couldn't understand why she needed the sword when she had long since abandoned it. Feeling embarrassed by his abrupt reaction, the servant apologized to Daphne and Ethan. His excitement was excessive, and he realized it, embarrassed in front of them. Daphne, blushing with embarrassment, tried to explain her behavior. She admitted that she was looking for the sword, but her words were confused, and she felt uncomfortable under the stares. Laura, the head maid, intervened in the conversation, offering her help. She promised to clean Daphne's room and let her know if she needed help. Ethan and Daphne looked at each other in bewilderment. They both wondered who Laura really was and why she was acting so strangely. Ethan admitted that he didn't know all the details himself, but he had heard that it was all in the past. Daphne, however, insisted on finding out what that all in question was. Daphne and Ethan, while in the old library, begin a conversation. Daphne, with a slight smile on her face, asks Ethan what he was looking for here. Ethan looks a little dazed and slightly nervous, as if something or someone has disturbed his calm. Ethan explains that he didn't intend to scare her. His light tone and gestures show that he only meant to make a joke, but Daphne still remains wary, testing his sincerity. Ethan admits to being a little scared himself, mistaking Daphne for a ghost. This library is known for its ghost legends, which only adds tension to their dialogue and an air of mystery. Daphne confirms that the library is indeed famous for its ghosts. She says this with a slight chuckle, but Ethan is still vigilant because he can't completely trust a stranger in such a mysterious place. He thinks to himself that even though Daphne doesn't look like a fraud, he shouldn't relax. Doubts flicker through his mind, caused by her sudden appearance and the strange circumstances of their meeting. Ethan ponders whether he can trust a man who appears out of nowhere so suddenly. His inner voice tells him to be cautious and not to trust words that could be just a cover for true intentions. Ethan remembers that he's looking for an unusual book, a red book with no author or title. This description already sounds mysterious, but he feels strongly about the need to find this book, despite all the strange things going on around him. Ethan describes the size and thickness of the book, noting that it is about this size. His quest is clearly important to him, but Daphne seems to realize that the book may be a clue to something more significant. Daphne clarifies that she is unsure of the book's contents, as she has not had time to finish reading it herself. Her curiosity grows, however, and she suggests that they continue their search together to finally discover what lies within those mysterious pages. Daphne asks if anyone has entered the library before her. Ethan replies that while he was here, he didn't see anyone. This information heightens the tension and fuels interest in further events that may reveal the mystery of the unusual book and the library's mysterious ghosts. Zuria recalls a meeting with Hiss that left her with mixed feelings. She doubts whether the Emperor was really happy to see her. Her memories lead to feelings of bitterness and misunderstanding. Zuria clenches her fist in annoyance, thinking that she didn't expect such a look from the Emperor. She is disappointed by his reaction, feeling that he did not show proper respect and warmth. The memory of meeting Hiss for the first time after a 10-year hiatus triggers strong emotions in Zuria. She feels that the Emperor should have greeted her with more joy. After all, so much time has passed. Hiss looks at Zuria with a smile on his face, surrounded by flowers. He is genuinely happy to see her, which is evident in his facial expression. This causes Zuria to doubt his sincerity even more. Zuria unexpectedly confesses to Hiss that he was her first love. His reaction is unexpected, causing Zuria to further question her feelings and what could have been between them. Zuria's maid asks if she has met the court servants. The question triggers Zuria's memories of times when she was closer to palace intrigue and life at court. The servants tell her that the Empress is unpredictable and knows exactly what it means to be Empress, but does not run away from her duties. This creates in Zuria an even greater respect for the Empress. Zuria learns that the Empress has left dinner with His Highness, which makes her surprised and interested. She cannot believe that such an important person could leave the dinner so abruptly. The maid confirms that His Highness has escorted all the servants out, so they don't know the exact reason for the Empress's departure. Zuria senses tension and uncertainty in a situation that seems strange and mysterious to her. Zuria asks what the servants of House Karis say about the Empress. They tell her that she is quiet, well-mannered, and a typical noblewoman. This description makes Zuria respectful, but also slightly envious. Against the backdrop of a posh mansion, Zuria is in doubt. She is convinced that those around her are either blind or have fallen for the cunning tricks of the new Empress Daphne. Distrust and suspicion gleam in her eyes. Zuria ponders the fact that Daphne is clearly up to something. Her impeccable behavior seems suspicious, and Zuria can't shake the thought that it's all part of an elaborate plan. She recalls catching Daphne's gaze once and feeling something strange. The gaze was too cold and intense, as if it concealed some sinister secret. Zuria's maid confirms that before moving to the palace, Daphne was found unconscious. This fact further alarms Zuria, and she tries to figure out what exactly happened. Zuria, stroking her chin thoughtfully, asks about possible reasons for the unconsciousness. She suggests that Daphne may have some sort of chronic illness, which adds new layers to her suspicions. The maid explains that she wasn't given the details, though she tried to bribe people, but it turns out that Daphne's personality has changed since the incident, which further alarms Zuria. Zuria begins to suspect that Daphne may have experienced something unusual, perhaps even mystical, since her personality has changed so much. She wonders if something incredible has happened to her, like death and resurrection. Daphne approaches Zuria and, smiling, wonders what has her so excited. Daphne's smile looks both charming and intimidating, but Zuria does not succumb to her charms and keeps her distance. Zuria concludes that Daphne is either very savvy or just lucky, but either way, she is just a woman who has been thrown out of her home and sacrificed. Zuria's maid informs her that Daphne has only a few weeks left, just like the previous empresses. This information only strengthens Zuria's determination to unravel the mysteries of the new empress and find out what dark forces are behind her throne. Zuria reveals that she heard something new this morning that could change their situation. She shares the rumors she heard, and the atmosphere becomes tense. Zuria continues reporting that His Highness shared a dance with Empress Daphne at last night's banquet. This news causes surprise and concern. However, she reassures her interlocutor by saying that His Highness has already apologized for it, and so it's fine. The atmosphere softens somewhat, but uncertainty remains. Zuria's interlocutor reminds her that rumors always contain both truth and lies. Zuria ponders, trying to figure out which of what she has heard is really important. She orders her to find a bright girl with no family, forge documents, and bring her into the palace as a servant. These actions seem suspicious and harbor something sinister. Next, Zuria instructs her to find a royal maid with a dark past and offer her money for leaving the palace. Her order becomes increasingly harsh and ruthless. Zuria, smiling among the blooming roses, calmly orders the girl to be killed as soon as it's over. Her cold expression contrasts with the serene setting of the garden. Louis, Prince of Arana, wakes up with a heavy hangover and remembers that he has never felt such a warm welcome in the empire of Pianthus. He is amazed at the care he has been given, which leads him to think of past hospitality. Haz, the emperor, looks at him with a serious face and reminds him that Louis must leave soon. His words sound like a reminder of the imminent farewell, causing the prince to have mixed feelings and a hint of sadness. Louis smiles, trying to hide his feelings, and suggests that he finish his breakfast and hit the road in peace. He laughs at Hisa's last line, in which he allowed himself to insert a rude word, which adds a touch of humor to their parting dialogue. Prince Louis expresses disappointment that even on his last day in the empire, he has not been honored by Empress Daphne. His words reflect bitterness and feelings of being unappreciated, though he tries not to show his vulnerability. He recalls Daphne refusing him a dance at last night's banquet, which was a particularly painful moment for him. His eyes read resentment, which is heightened by the memory of those moments when he was rejected. Daphne, embarrassed, explains that her dancing skills are clearly insufficient to dance with the prince. She tries to justify herself by smiling, but her awkwardness only emphasizes the depth of her feelings. Heath remarks that when she danced with him, it didn't bother her. He expresses this with a slight hint, adding a note of jealousy and hurt that shows his unwillingness to share Daphne's attention with anyone else. Daphne, on the other hand, notices that Hiss seemed to be enjoying the dance, which makes him wonder. She sees him not only as an emperor, but as a man capable of experiencing simple pleasures, which creates an invisible bond between them. She is relieved that the dance went well and thanks Hisa for leading. This acknowledgement gives him mixed feelings, as the compliments don't work the way she had hoped. His emotion scale doesn't rise, leaving him pondering. Heath, despite his best efforts, remains blushing and embarrassed. He realizes that the compliments are not affecting his self-esteem the way they should, leaving him in a state of reflection about his role and feelings for Daphne. Daphne reflected on the fact that her magical abilities can be enhanced when she helps someone in real life. She also noted that she and Hiss got along well despite their differences. Heath noticed that Emperor Arana was probably already concerned, and suggested that Daphne and Lewis finish their meal and get ready. Louis jokingly agreed, and noted that he would have plenty of news to discuss upon his return. Heath, holding up his hand, invited Daphne to follow him. He expressed his concern and showed his willingness to support her in her time of need, which made her feel good. Heath, surprised, heard Daphne offer to teach him something new. Daphne recalled how Heath had taught her how to dance at the banquet and suggested that she continue her training in that direction. Heath was confused and tried to understand exactly what Daphne meant. He felt uncertain, but he was interested in the Empress's suggestion. Moss, the butler, didn't understand what Daphne meant and asked if she was mistaken. The situation became even more confusing, but she maintained her confidence. Daphne reported that Prince Louis would be leaving soon, and she insisted that Heath come out immediately. She was concerned that they might be late, and she was trying to expedite their actions. Heath wondered if this was another one of Daphne's tricks. He couldn't stop thinking about her and her words, which caused him to have internal doubts. Daphne had said that everyone was waiting for them outside. Her confidence and persistence showed that she was ready for decisive action and confident in her abilities. Heath, a little embarrassed, agreed and suggested they go together. Her confidence and beauty made a strong impression on him, and he felt ready to follow her wherever she went. Empress Daphne thinks with a disgruntled expression on her face that calling Louis a womanizer and a bugger is an understatement. Her annoyance is clearly directed at this man, and you can tell by the look in her eyes and the thought written on the image. Louis appears with a broad smile. He informs her that all preparations are complete, and he does so with visible enthusiasm. His cheerful mood contrasts with Daphne's irritation, creating a sense of tension between them. Daphne, with a strained smile, wishes Louis a pleasant journey home, but in her thoughts lies rage. She is tired of his games and mentally demands that he stop his manipulations. Her face depicts a struggle between politeness and hidden anger. Louis expresses regret that he has to leave, addressing Daphne as Her Highness. Her hand gesture suggests that this is a forced farewell, though she may be glad to see him go. Louis tries to ask for more time next time, but his hand is grabbed. This moment symbolizes his unwillingness to let go of the situation or his desire to remain the center of attention. Emperor Hiss, with a cold expression on his face, interrupts Louis, demanding that he already leave. His stern tone and directness show that he has no patience for Louis's behavior and wishes this conversation to end as soon as possible. Louis thanks him for the banquet and informs him that it is time for him to leave, keeping a smile on his face. His confidence and ease in saying goodbye show that he is used to these situations and knows how to save face. Daphne enjoys the fresh air in the garden, feeling refreshed after Louis leaves. She notes the purity of the air, which symbolizes her inner cleansing and relief after a stressful conversation. Laura, the head maid, addresses Daphne, inviting her to come inside as it is cold outside. Daphne thanks her for her hard work, showing her appreciation and attention to detail despite her status. Daphne decides to leave and informs Heath, saying that it is not too late. This emphasizes her desire to end the day in peace and continue the evening in a more private setting. Emperor Highs, feeling deeply concerned for his beloved, instructs his loyal servants to take care of Empress Daphne. One of the servants, with visible excitement and drops of sweat on his forehead, accepts this important order, realizing its importance and responsibility. Laura, one of the chief maids, turns to another servant, asking if he has heard what the emperor said before. The latter, slightly surprised by her question, clarifies what she means, trying to understand what she is talking about and what her doubts are. Laura explains that she only heard the order to take care of the Empress, but she worries that there may have been some other instructions. She anxiously wonders if he has missed something important. The servant replies that, in his opinion, nothing important has been missed and everything he has heard has been relayed correctly. The elderly and wise butler, Moss, offers to return to the palace, informing Laura that Empress Daphne has already returned inside. His calm and confident tone conveys to Laura a sense of assurance that everything is under control and their task is complete. Emperor Hiss, reflecting on the business at hand, turns to his trusted servant, saying that they still have time for a cup of tea. This phrase indicates his desire to find some peace and relaxation in his busy schedule. Daphne lies on her bed, immersed in deep thought. She worries that her emotional state may prevent her from returning to her normal life. Her anxieties and fears are putting her under tremendous pressure, and she searches for answers to her inner questions. She ponders the biggest obstacle to her bargain with the deity is that her heart, which she must win, belongs to the emperor. These thoughts cause her deep sadness and anxiety, but she does not give up hope. Daphne recalls her many visits to Hiss's palace, where she hoped to see him again. Her persistence and desire to meet the emperor shows how strong her feelings for him are and her desire for their reunion. She realizes that emperors are very busy people, and she has not been able to meet Moss, let alone Hiss himself. These realizations heighten her feelings of loneliness and despair, but also emphasize her determination not to give up. A servant informs Daphne that His Highness is not presently present. She, surprised and with slight anxiety, asks again where he is. These words cause her renewed anxiety, and she begins to speculate on possible reasons for his absence. On her way home, Empress Daphne scrutinizes all the places where Hiss could be. Passing the palace walls, she scrutinized every corner with interest, trying to find even the slightest trace of him. But the palace was huge, and every person she met was sure to greet her. Soon Daphne realized that her search was in vain, and she returned with nothing, tired and a little disappointed. In her bedroom, Daphne was lying on her bed when her headmaid Laura entered. The Empress was surprised to see her and immediately asked why she had come, for she wanted to get some rest. Laura, concerned about her mistress's condition, sharply reminded her not to lie in that position. She tried to get the Empress to rise, but she persisted in resting. Daphne tiredly said that she needed to take a little break because she was very tired. Laura, though she understood her condition, still persisted and asked the Empress to get up. Laura suggested that if Daphne was very tired, she should at least roll over onto her back. Her eyes showed concern for the health of the Empress, who seemed to ignore her words. Reflecting on Laura's words, Daphne remembered how she had not trembled with fear when she had danced with Hiss. She wondered if her calmness could be a subconscious reaction to something more. Daphne continued to analyze her sensations, wondering why she hadn't panicked. She realized that fear may have left a deep mark on her body, manifesting itself in moments like this. The Empress wanted to ask about a deity she hadn't seen in days. She felt undecided about her strategy and unsure of what to do next. Daphne stubbornly refused to get up despite Laura's entreaties. Her maid reminded her that as a monarch she should maintain her dignity, but the Empress was determined to rest. Daphne ponders how fear of someone can suddenly disappear and marvels at the phenomenon, clearly surprised and somewhat confused. She admits to herself that she was so scared of the person that she couldn't even approach them, but one day she realized that she was no longer afraid, indicating her personal growth and overcoming internal barriers. Daphne continues her reflection by admitting that she even enjoyed experiencing this fear at times, perhaps because it added spice to her life or relationships. Laura, her devoted servant, suggests that perhaps Daphne simply saw a different side of this man, which caused a change in her perception and feelings. Daphne thoughtfully interjects whether she has seen another side of the man, which emphasizes her attempt to understand and realize her feelings and attitudes toward this man. Laura explains that at first Daphne only saw the frightening side, but then she was shown another, more positive side, which may explain the change in her fear. Laura says that all people have multiple faces. Someone may appear threatening, but may one day smile and appear happy, which causes Daphne to reflect on the versatility of human nature. Laura concludes that at the end of the day, there are not just good or bad people. It all depends on the angle of view and perception, which helps Daphne make sense of her relationships. Daphne decides that she needs to focus on the good aspects of Emperor Hiss and not bring up what she doesn't like about him, which reflects her desire for a more harmonious relationship. Daphne thanks Laura for her wise words, and Laura's surprised by her emotional outburst, which emphasizes Daphne's inner changes and her gratitude for her support. Daphne realizes that Heath has an interest in her. This discovery makes her feel slight excitement, but also confusion, for she doesn't know how to properly respond to his feelings. She notices that Heath is becoming more relaxed and comfortable in her presence, especially when he doesn't feel obligated to her. This brings her some relief and confidence in their relationship. Daphne decides that she needs to understand this side of Heath better so that her body will stop being afraid of him. She wants to learn his true intentions and learn to trust him. Elsewhere, an elder resents the proposal to raise taxes on the nobility, believing it to be a useless measure. His outrage reflects the general tension among the nobles. Other council members remind him that taxes have already been raised last month. This further adds to the tension in the discussion. Hayes intervenes in the dispute, agrees with Duke Delis, and urges everyone to think about the decision again. His authoritative intervention causes everyone to shut up and reflect. The council members find the decision outrageous and ask for another reconsideration. Their protests emphasize the seriousness of the situation. Hiss watches with a serious expression on his face, realizing that important decisions are at stake. He realizes that every move could have unexpected consequences. All 8 members of the council have gathered to discuss the matter. One of them has organized an attack, further complicating the situation. Hiss concludes the meeting by listening to the opinions of all the council members and taking note of them. The elder reminds them that despite all the disagreements, Hayes remains emperor and his word must be decisive. The elder interrupts the young man who wanted to object, telling him that it is important to think before speaking. His serious tone shows that the situation is tense and requires a wise approach. Emperor Hiss ponders the elder's words. He realizes that he should not assume that the sun disappears as it sets over the horizon, which is a metaphor to remind him that hope and opportunity do not disappear even in dark times. The gathering of the entire council in one place is unsettling to Hisa, and he realizes the risk that such a concentration of power and influence brings. His resolve grows, and he realizes that he must proceed with caution to avoid possible dangers. Heath admits that he didn't get a proper night's sleep last night. His thoughts were preoccupied, and he could not find peace, which adds to the drama of his inner feelings and emphasizes the tension of the situation. The image of the Empress Daphne reappears in his thoughts. He realizes that he cannot forget her, for every time he closes his eyes he sees her face, which speaks of his deep feelings and anxiety. Heath recalls that the library used to be his private, secret place where he found solace and peace. Now, with the changes around him, he feels that this place no longer belongs to him, which causes him to feel a sense of loss. Suddenly he notices Daphne, and his fears return. Her presence reminds him of past failures and fears, which escalate again, causing him to struggle internally. Standing in front of the door, he realizes that if he turns back now, he will escape these feelings. But deep down, he knows that he must face his fears head-on in order to overcome them. Hisa's inner dialogue continues, and he realizes that he may have seen the other side of the situation. He begins to realize that he needs to look at the problem from a different perspective, which may lead to new solutions. Laura's advice gives Daphne the courage she sorely needed. Her wisdom and support help her gain confidence in her actions and aspirations, which inspires her to move forward and make important decisions. Daphne, determined to find the positive aspects of the Emperor, realizes that she may not get another chance. With this thought in mind, she decides to stay and continue her search despite her fears and inner doubts. Finding Hiss sleeping in the library, Daphne is surprised and decides to move closer to find out why he chose such an unusual place to sleep. She can't understand what could have caused him to fall asleep here, surrounded by books. She observes him and notices that he is just lying there, breathing in and out slowly, as if he is deeply asleep. This sight seems unusual to her, as he usually behaves very differently and is always full of energy. Approaching Hisu, Daphne asks why he is sleeping here and not in his room. She tries to understand the reasons for his behavior and to understand what is going on inside him that could have led to such a state. After checking his condition, Daphne notices that Heath has no fever. She wonders if she should call someone to help him, such as Laura. Perhaps he just needs some rest and some care. Heath wakes up and asks Daphne not to leave. He looks weak and needs her help and support at this moment. Daphne feels his words touch her heart and realizes she can't leave him. Heath says that Daphne startled him with her sudden appearance. He didn't expect to see her here and was surprised. Daphne tries to reassure him, saying that she just wanted to see how he was feeling. Daphne reflects on the fact that Heath is usually stiff and motionless, like a statue. She can't believe this is the same emperor she knew. A doubt appears in her mind whether she can really understand him. Hiss is embarrassed and his face turns red. Daphne notes this to herself, wondering at his reaction. She sees it as a sign that he is human too, with his own weaknesses and feelings, just like her. She admits that she should have been the one to say she was scared. But really, it was Heath who scared her with his condition and the fact that he slept in the library. She realizes that their paths have intertwined for a reason, and that there are many more challenges and discoveries ahead. Hiss catches Daphne in the library and asks what she is doing here. He sees that she is confused and slightly annoyed by his appearance. Daphne replies that she came here to read, not to dance. Daphne explains that she was looking for a book, but Heath suddenly starts pulling on her cheeks, catching her off guard. This embarrasses her, and she doesn't know how to react to his actions. She notices that Heath is sleeping in the library instead of in his room. Daphne begins to wonder why he chose that place to sleep. Perhaps it has to do with his affections and habits. Hiss admits that the library was his secret place until Daphne came. He feels that her presence has disturbed his privacy, and it causes him mild embarrassment. Daphne wonders why Heath has come to the library now. She begins to suspect that he has ulterior motives. The questions multiply in her mind, and she tries to find answers. Heath answers that he doesn't want Daphne to come here. He admits that his actions were impulsive and not thought out. Daphne notices that he isn't being completely honest with her and continues to push for answers. Daphne accuses Heath of first pulling her cheeks and now making her look guilty. She emphasizes that she came here for the book and didn't expect this reaction. This leaves her even more perplexed. Daphne says that if Heath doesn't want to see her, she should say so directly instead of mumbling to herself. She presses for candor, which puts Heath in an awkward position. He begins to question his actions. Heath realizes that he has never spoken this way to other people and wonders why his behavior has changed. He tries to sort out his feelings for Daphne and figure out what it is that he is so attracted to her. In the silence of the night, the maid Anna whisperedly warns another that the Empress is seeing ghosts, creating an atmosphere of unease and mysticism. This warning causes mixed feelings in the second maid, disbelief and fear. Empress Daphne has been in the library for half an hour, causing unease among the maids. Anna is nervously biting her nails, fearing that something may have gone wrong. Daphne enters the library, her face grim. She sternly asks if the maid has found the book. The atmosphere becomes tense. Everyone waits for the maid's answer. Anna answers with noticeable concern, explaining that she was literally carried to the library. Daphne, with a note of mockery in her voice, advises her to rest, hoping that she will get a good night's sleep. Anna's inner monologue becomes more and more disturbing. She does not understand who the Empress is talking to. At this time, Daphne is distracted and addresses her with a question about dinner. Daphne asks Anna a question about tonight's dinner, expressing her food preferences. Anna is confused when the Empress suddenly decides to find out for herself what will be served for dinner and refuses her help. When the maid asks if anyone else was in the library, Daphne replies with cold certainty that no one was, adding to the anxiety and tension in the room. A foot appears belonging to a man with blue hair. He calls out to the Empress, begging her to wait, but Daphne pays no attention, continuing on her way with a nonchalant look. Laura, the head maid, is solicitously inquiring about Daphne's well-being. She remains calm and assures her that everything is fine, despite the gloomy forebodings and tension in the air. Laura and Daphne's dialogue ends with a discussion of the maids, who have been frightened to death. Daphne coldly orders them to wait in the hall, hoping that this will improve their discipline, emphasizing her strict and commanding nature. Laura informs Daphne that her dress has been sent to Luna. She warns that it may have to be made from scratch. Daphne realizes this and thanks Laura for her concern. Laura asks Daphne not to scold the maids too much, saying that these things happen. Daphne, though she realizes this, still remains concerned. On the evening of the quarrel with Hiss, there is an incident at the Imperial Palace. Daphne recalls the events of that evening, which causes her waves of anxiety. The incident began when one of the maids carrying dishes accidentally spilled food on Daphne's dress. This moment was the beginning of a serious conflict. In anger, Daphne yells at the maids, calling them worthless and ordering them to clean up immediately. She does not tolerate such mistakes in her surroundings. Laura tries to calm Daphne down, assuring her that everything is fine and she should not worry. However, Daphne feels that such behavior cannot be tolerated. Daphne ponders that if soup or pasta were spilled on her dress, it could be dangerous. Her concern for her health and appearance increases. The frightened maids await punishment, realizing their guilt. They hope for Daphne's mercy but prepare for the worst. Laura asks Daphne again if she has been burned. Daphne replies that she is fine and only her dress was hurt. The incident leaves her pondering the attentiveness of her maids and the need to be stricter. Daphne is haunted by a sense of unease after the incident in the library, which only intensifies. Thoughts of Murphy's Law and adding insult to injury flash through her mind. Laura thinks about bad things happening to everyone at once and blames herself for not training her subordinates well enough. Daphne admits that she's been too distracted lately. Laura, on the other hand, notes that it's her job to oversee everything, but the yard has been particularly busy lately. Laura concludes that she must punish the offenders severely so that no more mistakes like this will be made. With a worried expression on her face, Laura realizes that she must make it clear to everyone that such incidents must not happen again. Daphne, watching Laura, realizes that she should not cross her, and it is better to be careful. One of the maids, with pink hair, reproaches Morton that everything happened because of her. Morton explains that it all happened because of an accident when she spilled food on Empress O. She admits her guilt and is willing to take responsibility. In desperation, Morton asks what she should do now, assuming that the punishment will be severe. Her coworker points out that if she hadn't spilled the food, this conversation wouldn't have happened at all, and blames Morton for what happened despite her explanation. Laura, the head maid, sternly asks Morton if she understood her orders. Morton replies with obvious irritation that she will do what is necessary and asks her to stop whining. In a rage, another pink-haired maid yells at Morton, accusing her of losing her mind and not understanding the seriousness of the situation. The pink-haired maid pushes Morton, reminding her that rumors are not important. Morton is still the Emperor's companion and head of the palace. The pink-haired maid rebukes Morton for her insolence, reminding her of her dancing with His Highness and her closeness to the Emperor. Morton confidently states that she can take a seat next to the Emperor's throne and asks what if His Highness punishes her for it. Morton decisively states that he will accept the punishment or leave if it comes to that, showing his willingness to face any consequences. Laura, angered by Morton's behavior, points out the need to apologize for the sake of her parents and respect for their memory. Morton coldly reminds Laura of Count and Countess Fisher of North, asking if she doesn't feel sorry for them. Laura points out that the Count and Countess work hard to maintain the estate, and Morton's actions only add to their worries. Morton admits that she no longer cares. If she is thrown out, she will leave, as she has nothing to lose, remembering her poverty despite her noble origins. Morton is in a difficult situation and dreams of the day when she can leave this palace. She wants to earn money to buy herself some normal clothes and start a new life. That is her only goal right now. She decides that as soon as she earns enough money, she will send it to her family and end this miserable life as a servant. Morton dreams of freedom and new opportunities. Laura and the other maid notice that Morton looks worried. Laura asks if she made the mistake on purpose, to which the other maid expresses puzzlement as to why Morton would do something like that. Morton explains that she's just tired and has no intention of causing harm. She wants to get away from this life and start fresh, and she just needs some time and support. The head of the maids rebukes everyone for what happened, saying that spilling food on the Empress' dress is a serious offense. She blames everyone for the incident, showing her strictness and demands for discipline. At the same time, the superior warns that one could lose their head for such a thing, adding even more tension among the maids. They realize that their actions could have serious consequences. Morton takes responsibility for what has happened, saying that it is the fault of all the maids working in the palace, including herself. She is ready to take the punishment along with everyone else. The boss announces that all the maids will undergo additional training and their wages will be cut in half next month. Morton is shocked to realize that this decision will affect everyone and wonders if it is fair. Zuria receives an important message from the Empress's palace. The The letter states that the clown does not cry, which makes her wonder about the hidden intentions behind the message. Zuria realizes that there is something important behind these words, and it requires immediate action. Her eyes read determination and willingness to fight for her plans. Zuria realizes that their plans are ruined because of someone else's stupidity. Her penetrating gaze and slight smile hide her inner frustration and determination to deal with the situation. She feels betrayed and is willing to take any action to regain control of the situation and punish those responsible. Kelly, Zuria's maid, tries to justify herself for the failed assignment, but Zuria interrupts her by ordering her to kill the traitor, which emphasizes her cruelty and uncompromising nature. Kelly realizes that her life depends on the successful completion of the order, and fear of her mistress creeps into her heart. Zuria tears up the letter, reflecting on the fact that the more people who know their secret, the greater the chance of exposure. She decides that the maid who betrayed them is no longer needed. The cold fire of determination sparkles in her eyes, and she realizes that action must be swift and ruthless to maintain control. Kelly is distraught, wondering if she should hire a new maid. A tear of betrayal and fear rolls down her cheek, showing her helplessness before Zuria. She feels her heart clench with terror as she realizes that her fate depends on the mercy of her cruel mistress. Zuria coldly orders Kelly to prepare a place for the new girl after the unlucky girl dies. Her gestures are calm, but her words are full of deadly intent. She plans every move with precision, confident in her power and ready to eliminate any threat to her plans. Zuria reminds Kelly why she brought her here, emphasizing the importance of loyalty and the punishment for betrayal. Kelly realizes the gravity of the threat, realizing that any mistake could be her last. Her heart overflows with fear, but she knows she must follow orders. Zuria reminds Kelly that she saved her life and it must not be forgotten. Kelly inwardly shudders as she realizes that her duty of life makes her a slave to Zuria. Zuria threatens Kelly with a magic spell left around her neck that will activate the next time she betrays her. Kelly's face is contorted with fear and pain, and she realizes that her life is now under constant control. Zuria, with a smile on her face, warns Kelly not to make any mistakes. The light around her emphasizes her sinister yet beautiful nature. Kelly sees her mistress enjoying her power and realizes she must be extremely careful to survive in this cruel world. Heath was tired after a long meeting with the council, and Moss, his loyal butler, urged him to get something to eat, noticing that the Emperor hadn't eaten since that important meeting. Moss offered Heath some strawberry juice, but the Emperor firmly declined. Hiss had no patience for food, even if his health was on the line, preferring to manage on his own. Moss continued to insist, remembering that Heath had complained of chest pains to Lord Ethan. He was concerned about his lord's condition and wanted to find the cause of his ailment. Hyes had said with confidence that he knew his body better than anyone and could recognize when he was ill. His confidence prevented him from admitting weakness in front of the butler. A hope flashed through his mind that the recent events were reality and not a dream. The moment filled his soul with mixed feelings. He recalled the meeting with the mysterious girl who had made a strong impression on him. Her beauty and grace had left an indelible mark on his heart. Heath decided to return to the office, as the paperwork could not be delayed. Moss nodded understandingly, following the Emperor. However, the path Hiss chose led to the Empress Palace, which surprised the butler. He pointed out the mistake, but Hiss firmly stated that this path was shorter. Moss was confused, as the direction was clearly wrong, but given Heath's insistence, he continued to follow him. Eventually, Moss admitted that indeed this way was shorter. Hiss smiled, and Moss noted to himself that the Emperor always knew how to find quick solutions. Laura, the head maid, apologizes to Empress Daphne for the inconvenience caused by yesterday's incident. Laura looks very upset, showing that this is important to her. Daphne calms her down, assuring her with a smile that there is nothing to worry about, showing her mercy and kindness. Laura promises that such mistakes at the Imperial Palace will not happen again. She is genuinely concerned about her work and respect for the Empress. Another character's laughter in the shot adds a note of lightness to the situation, showing that the situation is not as tense as it seems. Moss, the butler, joins the conversation, indicating that the main hall of the palace is the quickest way through. His suggestion sparks interest in Daphne and a slight smile that shows her desire to continue the conversation in a more positive direction. Laura reports that new flowers have bloomed in the garden. Her message makes Daphne want to go and see it immediately. This moment emphasizes their close relationship and Daphne's love for the beauty of nature. Heath suggests that they go to see the flowers together. Daphne, a little hesitantly, agrees. Their interactions are filled with warmth and understanding, making their relationship deeper and more touching. Laura asks Daphne if she knows where His Highness is now. Daphne informs her that she heard he went to his office and perhaps they can meet him if they hurry. This moment creates a sense of hurry and anticipation. Daphne reflects on her last meeting with Hiss in the library, which happened only a day ago but left a deep impression. Her thoughts and memories add depth and personal experiences to the story. Daphne decides it would be better to talk to Hiss the next time she meets him, when his mood is better. She hopes for a successful resolution to the situation, which emphasizes her wisdom and patience. Upon meeting Hiss, Daphne rushes to tell him something very important. At this point, the tension and anticipation reaches its peak, creating intrigue and a desire to know the sequel. The last scene shows Daphne, Heath, and Moss discussing urgent matters together. The atmosphere becomes more serious, but at the same time shows the team spirit and cohesion of the main characters. The commander, alarmed by the news, rushes to Moss and asks what has happened and why the rush. The commander's face shows concern. He clearly feels that something serious has happened. At the same time, Moss looks tense, which only adds to the tension of the situation. Daphne stands in the palace corridor and hears from the servants that a maid has died in the imperial palace. Her eyes are full of anxiety and incomprehension as she tries to realize what could have led to such a tragedy, especially in a place like the Empress's palace. Moss informs the commander that a maid named Morton Fisher, who had worked at the palace for 3 years, has died. The commander, clearly shaken, asks about the cause of her death. The scene heats up, for the cause of death could have serious consequences for everyone. Moss tells him that judging by the marks on her neck and the condition of her body, she probably hanged herself. The commander looks shocked and can't believe his ears. He wonders why the maid could have decided to take such a desperate step. Moss confirms that according to the other maids and the evidence found, it was indeed a suicide. The commander begins to doubt the official version, trying to understand what could have pushed the maid to such an act in the Empress's palace. Moss explains that they are still working out the details, but preliminary reports suggest that the head maid Laura told Morton off too harshly. That may have been the final straw for her. The commander realizes that the situation is much more complicated than it seems at first glance. The commander recalls that he had never heard of the Fisher family. Moss explains that Morton was from the Earl Fisher household in Norfolk, out west. The commander begins to put the puzzle together, realizing that Morton's background may have played a key role in what happened. Moss suggests that Morton became a servant because of the turmoil in the Empress's palace. This explains her plight and perhaps her desperation. The commander begins to realize that the system and routines in the palace may have brought her to such a tragic end. The commander notices that Morton's shoes are too worn for a palace maid. This fact further confirms his suspicions about Morton's hard life and that her situation was much worse than previously thought. They both realize that they need to investigate deeper. The commander is horrified to realize that the daughter of an impoverished count may have hanged herself because she was severely reprimanded by the head maid. This thought gives him no rest, and he decides to bring the investigation to a conclusion in order to find out the whole truth and avoid such tragedies in the future. The brown-haired commander reflects on the rarity of the incident. He mentions that something like this has happened before, which arouses the interest of his interlocutor. His eyes read seriousness and tension. Moss, the butler, recalls a previous incident that occurred during the tea party. He clarifies the details and expresses concern, trying to understand what went wrong. His words confirm the seriousness of the matter at hand. The commander clarifies that the matter is not about the daughter of a pauper count, but about a girl who has served in the palace for 3 years. He mentions her worn-out shoes, emphasizing her loyalty and hard work. His tone conveys respect and sympathy. Moss reflects on whether she was often scolded for poor performance. His eyes reflect anxiety and concern. The commander explains that otherwise she would have left the palace long ago, which leads to speculation about her fate and the reasons for her departure. The butler continues to reflect on how the girl has lived in the palace for 3 years and has become accustomed to the local climate. He tries to find an explanation for her behavior and condition. Her life and difficulties become the object of his analysis and understanding. The commander recalls hearing about an incident during a dinner at the Empress's palace. His words evoke memories and cause tension in the conversation. He shares his thoughts and assumptions in an effort to find answers. It turns out that Morton Fisher, a servant girl, dropped a tray of food on the Empress. This event causes shock and concern for everyone present. The maid's story becomes the subject of discussion and criticism. As a result of the incident, all the maids are severely punished, causing anxiety and fear among them. This emphasizes the severity of the palace rules and the cruelty of the punishment. The maids realize the seriousness of their mistakes and the consequences. Empress Daphne asks if Her Highness is all right. Her concern for the Empress's health is evident in her words and facial expression. After receiving confirmation, she calms down a bit. The commander notes that the head maid was shocked by what had happened. This emphasizes the magnitude and unexpectedness of the incident. His words convey the tension and seriousness of the situation, making one think about the future. Daphne, the purple-haired empress, suggests that Laura, the head maid, take some rest and not do any business for the day. Laura, though surprised by this suggestion, agrees, but is still worried about the empress's condition. Daphne reassures Laura, telling her that all the maids have the day off today and she need not worry about business. Laura, expressing her gratitude, walks away, leaving Daphne alone in her thoughts. Daphne suddenly hears the news from one of the servants that one of her maids has died. She is very shocked by this and immediately decides to look into the matter to see what happened. The commander confirms the information about the maid's death, which worries Daphne even more. She feels that something is wrong and demands a detailed explanation of the events to find out the true causes of the tragedy. The Empress strongly insists that she be given all the details of what happened in order to understand exactly what happened and why one of her loyal maids decided to commit suicide. The commander explains that the maid committed suicide after Laura reprimanded her for a mistake. This news shocks Daphne, as such a small thing could not have caused such a drastic decision. Daphne, hesitant, cannot believe that Laura's simple remark could have led to such an outcome. She demands more information and explanations from the commander to understand what really happened. The commander, still investigating, reports that there are rumors among the maids of a pay cut and mandatory additional training. These measures may have increased tensions and may have been one of the causes of the tragedy. Daphne tries to understand what prompted the maid to such an act because of a simple mistake. She finds no excuses and seeks to find the true cause of her despair to prevent similar occurrences in the future. The commander tells her that based on the testimony of the other maids and the condition of the scene, everything points to suicide. Daphne thinks deeply, determined to investigate the matter further and find the true reasons for what happened. Daphne, the purple-haired empress, receives important news. Moss has confirmed something significant. She looks serious, realizing the importance of the information. It turns out that a maid died in the Empress's palace, and the Imperial Palace has been informed of the incident. Daphne's gaze becomes even more focused. This means that Commander Hiss is now aware of the incident as well. Daphne realizes that the information has spread further than she expected, and this could have serious consequences. She realizes how painful death can be and decides that this issue must be dealt with first. Daphne is determined to deal with it as soon as possible. Laura, probably another maid or subordinate, said that she would punish those responsible, but that doesn't necessarily mean banishment or harsh punishment. Laura also mentioned that the pay cut would be temporary. Daphne sighs as she ponders the extra training that may have caused the tragedy. She is determined to find out all the details. When Daphne asks about the deceased's will, she is told that it has not been found anywhere, but other things have been discovered. The intrigue intensifies. Morton has packed all of the deceased's belongings and clothes in her luggage, which raises even more questions for Daphne. She feels that this could be an important part of the clue. Daphne is surprised to learn that all the belongings were packed as if the maid was going to leave. This sets her up for more suspicions. The commander confirms that all the things were packed, reinforcing Daphne's suspicions. She realizes that there is an urgent need to get to the bottom of this confusing case to prevent further problems. The commander sinks into thought, pondering how all of the maid's belongings were neatly packed. This makes him suspicious, as even the towels, socks, and spoons she used were folded. He can't understand why someone who was about to end her life would take the time to pack all of her belongings, even the spoons. It seems strange and illogical to him. Daphne's thoughts enter his mind. She begins to doubt that everything that happened was an accident, suggesting that it could have been planned a long time ago. Daphne questions the commander about the other maids. She wonders if the dead maid was close to any of them to better understand her emotional state. The commander reports that they have talked to all the servants in the palace, but none were close to the deceased. Apparently, she was withdrawn and quiet, making it difficult to relate to those around her. Apologizing for the delay, Daphne announces that the maid assigned to the scene will be arriving shortly. She wants to get more first-hand information. Daphne continues to ponder how the servants who worked side by side with the deceased could have failed to notice any signs of depression or suicidal tendencies. This strikes her as highly suspicious. She begins to suspect that something is wrong here. Everything is too spontaneous. Perhaps someone is hiding the truth about what happened, and it needs to be thoroughly investigated. At that moment, the maid assigned to the scene enters the room. Daphne suggests finding a quieter place to discuss all the details and find out the truth about what happened. Daphne stares intently at Kelly, causing her obvious concern. Kelly tries to hold herself steady, but the sweat on her forehead and the tense expression on her face give away her inner tension and fear. Zaria, lying in bed, asks Kelly what brought her here. Kelly hesitantly replies that nothing is wrong. Zaria, noticing her condition, concludes that Kelly has brought a new girl to the service. Kelly, pulling herself together, confirms that she has found the right fit. She proudly announces that the new girl has all the necessary qualities to be a good maid for the Empress. Zaria scrutinizes the document Kelly handed her. It speaks of Marianne Edmund, the 17-year-old daughter of Duke Horton Edmund, who inherited his title after his death. Zaria explains that after Duke Edmund's death, Marianne was left as the only one left to manage his estate and title. She survived a severe illness as a child that affected her hearing. However, despite her hearing problems, Marianne is able to speak. This was made possible through her perseverance and training. Zaria is confident that this will not prevent her from fulfilling her duties as a servant. When asked by Zaria about Marianne's relatives, Kelly replies that her mother died giving birth to her younger sister, and the rest of her relatives moved to another country long ago, leaving her alone. Zaria wonders how Marianne will be able to work as the Empress's maid if she has a hearing problem. Kelly replies confidently that Marianne can lip read, which makes up for her deficiency. Zaria confirms that she has tested Marianne's abilities personally. She is convinced that the girl understands everything as well as people with normal hearing, thanks to her ability to read lips. Zaria emphasizes that Marianne's status as the Duke's daughter will simplify all bureaucratic procedures. She is sure that there will be no problems with the documents, and Marianne will make an excellent servant. Zaria, sitting on the bed, smiles and asks where Marianne is now. She looks serene, surrounded by beautiful purple flowers hanging from above, creating an atmosphere of tranquility and beauty. The red-haired Marianne announces that Marianne is waiting downstairs. Her face is serious, her eyes full of concentration. Zaria decides to go down herself to meet Marianne, insisting on her decision. Zaria hugs Marianne and threatens her with a smile on her face. Dark emotions rage within her, but outwardly she remains calm and confident. These contrasts emphasize her complex character. Zaria's gaze is focused on Marianne. Her eyes show determination and strength. She realizes that Marianne cannot hear her words, but this does not stop her from acting. Zaria greets Marianne with a cheerful smile, introducing herself as Zaria Sapien. Her radiant smile and friendliness seem genuine, giving the illusion of friendliness and warmth. Marianne, a little nervously, replies that it is a pleasure to meet you and gives her full name. Her facial expression shows slight confusion, but she tries to keep a confident and friendly demeanor. Zaria asks Kelly to make them some tea. Her face expresses friendliness and joy, giving the impression of a calm and cozy moment. Kelly agrees, showing respect and willingness to honor the request. Zaria notices that Marianne has been looking at her scar on her arm. Her voice and gaze reads concern and interest. She realizes that the scar is important to Marianne and may be related to a past or painful event. With a slight smile on her face, Zuria asks if Marianne has any regrets. Her tone is soft, but there is a sly glint in her eyes that gives away her true intentions and hidden thoughts. Daphne, the purple-haired empress, notices one of the distant wings of the palace. Servants and knights live here, which causes her to look thoughtful. She realizes how much responsibility she has for these people. A servant informs Daphne that they have arrived at the location. The Empress, showing her majestic nature, silently accepts the information. She prepares herself to face the difficult situation she will soon encounter. The room they entered was inhabited by a maid named Morton. Daphne remembers her and realizes that this room is now empty. This loss seems painful to her, for every person in her palace is important. The maid who accompanied Daphne says that the Empress can rest. Daphne thanks her for her help and allows her to step back temporarily, though her eyes read the strain of what is happening. Daphne, smiling, admits that losing a colleague is not easy. She tries to hide her sadness, but her smile reflects the weight of the loss she has to put up with as a ruler. The maid bowed and thanked Daphne for her understanding. The Empress allowed her to leave while she herself was left alone with her thoughts on how to deal with this tragedy. Daphne realizes that one cannot get used to death. Even she, the Empress, has a hard time coming to terms with the loss among her subjects. She feels that the pain of loss will always be there for her. The maid remembers experiencing similar moments herself. This confuses her, and she realizes how difficult it is for Daphne. The maid feels that the Empress has to deal with this alone. Daphne asks if the maid knows who lives in the next room. The question makes her wonder because every person is important in this palace, and it is important to know about each of them. One of the maids in the room is worried that Her Majesty wants to ask something. It frightens her because meeting the Empress is always a thrill. They feel the tension and responsibility to their ruler. The maid, pointing her finger confidently, informs them that she knows the reason. She believes that Her Majesty has noticed something and suspects something amiss. Another maid, with a frightened expression on her face, wonders if the Empress can see ghosts, for perhaps she is trying to get to the truth by summoning spirits. The maid, in tears, asks her to stop talking about it. The maid, still unsettled, asks where she should go. Her colleague replies that the Empress is waiting for her. The maid ponders why such places are usually fenced off with ribbon or something similar, which only adds to her suspicions and anxiety. Daphne, who has entered the room, notices that the place has already been cleaned up and not a single spot has been left behind. This increases her suspicions that something is wrong here. Daphne notices that a chair has been rearranged, which only confirms her hunch about what is going on. She tensely looks around the room, trying to figure out what happened. Daphne is certain that Morton could not have killed himself, as the ceiling is too high for her to reach up and tie a knot. Her thoughts about the mystery begin to form a logical chain. She remembers that even she can barely reach the ceiling, let alone tie a knot, which makes the suicide theory even more unbelievable. Daphne questions the maid about her height, suspecting that she may be the same height as Morton. The maid, embarrassed, confirms that they are about the same height. This answer only strengthens Daphne's suspicions, and she decides that she must investigate the matter to the end to find out the truth. In a room of elegance and luxury, Daphne, the violet-haired empress, looks thoughtfully at the maid. She wonders if she is mistaken because her eyesight is below that of the maid Morton. The empress firmly orders the maid to stand on a chair to equalize their levels. The maid anxiously and hesitantly agrees to Daphne's order. Her face expresses doubt and concern, but she cannot disobey. Daphne continues to press her with her gaze, forcing her to get up on the chair and obey. When the maid stands up on the chair, Daphne orders her to stand on her tiptoes and try to reach the chandelier. The tone of her voice is stern and demanding, causing the maid to obey the order without question, though fear does not leave her heart. The maid, standing on the chair, feels insecure. She inwardly wonders why she has to do this, and sees that even Daphne struggles to reach the height of the chandelier. Her thoughts are filled with bewilderment and confusion. The Empress, watching the maid's attempts, continues to follow the process. She becomes more and more convinced that Morton could do the job, although she realizes that it is extremely difficult for the maid. Her gaze remains unwavering. The maid, reaching out for the chandelier, finally asks if she can come down. Her voice trembles with strain and fear, but she hopes for the Empress's permission. Daphne, satisfied with the result, finally allows her to do so, expressing her gratitude. The maid descends from her chair and sighs with relief, but her face still expresses worry. She's trying to understand what happened and why the Empress was so insistent on making her do this task. Her thoughts are filled with anxiety and doubt. In the dark room, illuminated only by a faint light, the maid questions what happened. She feels a cold hand on her shoulder and turns around, fearfully asking if she has done something wrong. Her fear reaches a climax as the situation becomes even more mysterious and tense. A white figure resembling a spirit or deity appears in the mysterious room. He asks if Daphne saw Morton die here. This creates an atmosphere of mysticism and mystery, making the reader wonder what happened in this gloomy place. The deity, clearly grieving, confirms that someone did indeed die in this room. His words are spoken with sadness and regret, reinforcing the gloomy and disturbing atmosphere, emphasizing the tragic nature of what has happened. Daphne, confused and worried, recalls their little plan with the deity. Her eyes are filled with anxiety. She cannot believe what has happened. This moment shows her inner struggle and feelings, adding to the emotional tension. Her voice is full of determination despite her worries. Daphne says that she doesn't care if the deity wants to be resurrected, but she advises him to take a closer look at those around him. This scene emphasizes her determination and fortitude despite all the hardships. The maid, frightened and confused, tries to address Daphne. Her face expresses fear and doubt, which adds tension and drama to the scene. She seems afraid to say something important that could change the situation. Daphne, with a sharp look and anxiety in her voice, tries to understand exactly what the maid is seeing. Her eyes are full of distrust and suspicion, which heightens the tension and creates a sense of impending danger. The scene emphasizes her anxiety and desire for the truth. At this point, it becomes clear that the maid's level of affection for the Empress was at 40%. This information heightens the drama by showing that even people close to one another can be insufficiently loyal or devoted, which can lead to tragic consequences. Emperor Hiss, absorbed in his work, receives news from the butler Moss that a maid has died in the palace. His eyes widen with shock, and he demands an explanation, trying to understand how such a thing could happen in his palace, where everything must be under strict control. Moss replies that the Empress is already on the scene, reassuring everyone. He is concerned, but reports that the Empress is fine. She even comforted the head maid. This news calms Hiss down a bit, but his worry for the Empress doesn't disappear completely. Hiss learns that the Empress has sent all of her maids away and skipped breakfast. This causes him even more anxiety as he realizes that her condition may be worsening due to lack of nutrition and stress. Moss confirms that the Empress is in a bad mood and has been hungry all day. Hiss realizes that the situation is more serious than he thought, and this adds to his concern for her health and emotional state. Heath clenches his fists, feeling his plans to get closer to Daphne crumble. He was so close to success, but now everything seems so distant and complicated. His heart fills with despair and determination not to give up despite the difficulties. Moss reports that Lady Zaria has requested an audience with Hiss and the Empress. This causes Heath questions and bewilderment. He wants to understand why Zaria has come and what she knows about what has happened that led her to this decision. Heath guesses that Zaria has heard about what happened at the palace. He's sure she's concerned and wants to help or find out more details. Hiss appreciates her concern, but doesn't want that concern to reach the Empress. Given Zuria's gentle nature, Hiss realizes that she must be worried about the Empress and wants to support her in this difficult moment. He knows that her presence could be helpful, but doesn't want it to cause further problems. Hiss orders Moss not to tell the Empress about Zuria's visit and asks him to escort her to his palace. Moss agrees, knowing that this is the best way to protect the Empress from unnecessary stress and possibly negative emotions that might surface. Zaria, standing at the door, says she came because she was very worried about Hisa and the Empress. Her gaze is determined and caring, ready to support them in their time of need despite her own worries and fears. Zaria has learned that news of the Empress' condition has traveled outside the castle and asks how she is feeling. She is concerned that information that was supposed to be kept secret has come to light. A servant assures her that the Empress has been comforting the grieving maid and therefore she is fine. However, Zuria wonders how this was possible if everyone was supposed to keep their mouths shut. Despite this, Zuria continues to worry, thinking that the Empress might be suffering because of the mishap that happened. She recalls her feelings when she lost her parents and was forced to move to another city. Zuria shares her pain with Hiss, remembering how much sadness and worry she felt when her parents died and she had to leave for Eren. These memories fill her heart with pain and sadness. Hiss, recalling his return after 10 years at the call of his older brother, says he still feels the loss. Zuria empathizes with him, realizing that the loss leaves an indelible mark on his soul. Zuria is certain that the Empress is greatly affected and recalls how the maid even served her. These words confirm her guess about the depth of the Empress's suffering. Unable to withstand her emotions, Zuria begins to cry. She apologizes to Hiss for her distress and tears, realizing that it is inappropriate. Hiss, seeing her condition, feels her pain echoing his own. He stands beside her, realizing how difficult it is to experience loss, and tries to comfort her with his presence. Zuria, still crying, apologizes for her intemperance and asks for Hissa's forgiveness. She tries to explain to him that her feelings are due to her deep empathy for the Empress and his loss. Hais quietly notices that his servants are watching them. Zuria realizes that she needs to keep her cool so as not to show her weakness in front of others. Zuria, slightly confused, thanks Emperor Hiss for his generosity. Her words are imbued with sincerity and warmth. She realizes her embarrassment and tries to express her gratitude. She promises to return the handkerchief the Emperor lent her, but after ruining it with her tears, she decides she will give him a new one. Her embarrassment is evident in every word, but the desire to give thanks prevails. Hiss, looking at Zuria demurely, asks why she came. His voice is both caring and stern. He wants to understand what brought her to him this time. Zuria, plucking up her courage, says that she has come to the audience because she has prepared a consolation gift for Her Majesty. A spark of hope burns in her eyes that this gift will be gratefully received. She reveals that her gift is a new maid for the Empress. Zuria is sure that this gesture will be appreciated, as she genuinely wants to help and make life at the palace easier. She realizes that she had to go to extreme measures due to time constraints, but believes that the effort has paid off. Her determination and belief in success gives her confidence in her actions. Heath mentions that Marianne Edmund, Duke Edmund's favorite daughter, is currently living alone with a couple of servants. His words show that he understands the importance and complexity of the situation. Zuria has heard that the Empress also lost her parents at an early age. She believes that Marianne, who has gone through a similar experience, would be the perfect consolation for the Empress, as no one would understand her better. However, Zuria does not envy the servants in the Empress Palace. She believes that although the Empress doesn't show her feelings, she must be lonely and scared. Zuria earnestly asks to accept her gift, hoping that the gesture will bring relief and joy. She smiles, expressing her faith that her efforts will not go unnoticed. The counselor insists on holding a ball to distract everyone from what has happened before word spreads. The Duke supports him, pointing out the need to eliminate rumors of the maid's death before they leave the palace walls. Emperor Hiss is apparently tired and irritated. He demands an end to the discussion. He resents the idea of holding the ball just 3 days after the death of the Empress's maid, seeing it as an attempt to cover his tracks. The counselor, with an expression of concern, warns that if Pianthus or the other kingdoms find out what happened, there will be bad consequences. He adds that no one killed the maid and suggests that they should be proactive. Emperor Haiz, in deep thought, expresses concern that Emperor Arana may learn of the incident and use this moment of weakness to attack Pianth. The counselor assures him that this is a small sacrifice for a greater cause. Emperor Haiz is outraged and senses the counselor's lack of empathy and respect for the deceased. He feels that to expect humanity from these people would be ridiculous. The counselor reminds Haiz of the events of 2 years ago, when rumors spread with incredible speed after the death of an imperial knight. He points out that it is impossible to predict how fast the rumors will spread this time. Emperor Haiz, irritated and tired, again expresses his displeasure with the counselor's suggestions. He is concerned about whether they can really keep things quiet and avoid serious repercussions. The counselor insists that their actions are necessary to protect the palace and the empire, despite the moral doubts. Hayes is left pondering, realizing the complexity of the situation and the gravity of making such a decision. Emperor Hayes, looking off into the distance, ponders how events will unfold next and how they will be able to cope with the problems that have arisen. The girl with blue hair ponders the fact that the servant girl in question was more than just a servant. She feels excitement and anxiety, her gaze filled with determination to figure out what is going on. The bald man with a serious expression continues the thought, adding that the maid was a personal servant of the Empress herself. His words emphasize the importance and status of the deceased, which raises even more questions and excitement. Emperor Hayes asks Duke Clement if he really believes that the masquerade can cover up the maid's death. Hayes doubts this plan and expresses his concern about the possible repercussions. However, Duke Clement is confident in his plan. He states that the masquerade will help distract his subjects and hide the truth. This conversation reveals the difference in approach and outlook on solving the problem between the advisors. Emperor Hiss, reluctantly agreeing, confirms his willingness to organize the masquerade as the situation demands. His face expresses doubt, but he realizes that they have no other choice. The decision has been made, and now everything depends on their ability to fulfill their plan. Hiss expresses hope that the counselor's predictions will prove correct and their plan will work. He is determined, but there is a note of anxiety in his voice. At this moment, he realizes his responsibility for what is happening. The counselor rushes to Hiss, asking what has happened. The emperor explains that they have been asked to organize the masquerade as soon as possible. His words are full of tension and insistence, as time is of the essence. The gray-haired counselor expresses his misgivings about the haste of such a decision, indicating that perhaps they are acting too soon. He is concerned about the possible repercussions and suggests that they think the plan over again. Heath argues that the sooner everyone forgets what happened, the better for everyone, especially Daphne. His words are full of determination and confidence that they are doing the right thing despite the risks. Hiss decides to personally inform the Empress Palace of the upcoming masquerade. He feels that it is the right thing to do and that Daphne needs to hear it from him. His eyes read responsibility and willingness to accept the consequences of his decisions. Daphne the Empress discovers that her scale of magical power has suddenly dropped to 0. She doesn't understand how this could have happened and feels helpless and confused. This sudden collapse of her powers causes her fear and bewilderment, for she has always been in control of her magic. Daphne reflects on the pain she feels when she is rejected. These feelings cause her deep frustration and loneliness. She recalls all the times she has felt unwanted and isolated, and this further intensifies her internal struggle. Emperor Hiss is concerned about Daphne's condition. He asks her what happened and why she seems so upset and weak. His genuine concern for her touches Daphne, but she doesn't know how to explain her feelings and problems to him. Heath notices that something is wrong and asks Daphne what brought her here. He sees that her condition is worsening and wants to understand the reason for her suffering. His eyes reflect concern and determination to help despite her confusion. Daphne informs him that there will be a masquerade ball at the castle in a few days, and she is worried that she will not be able to attend because of her condition. She fears that her absence will cause suspicion and rumors among the courtiers that could damage her reputation. She thinks that Heath should have already learned of the death of Morton, one of her loyal maids, and is surprised that he has heard nothing. Daphne is lost in speculation as to why she has been kept in the dark for so long, and it makes her feel even more alone. Heath begins to explain the situation. He knows that one of Daphne's maids died, and this event may have affected her greatly. Heath tries to choose his words so as not to hurt her even more, but realizes that the news will inevitably hurt her feelings. Daphne doesn't understand why she wasn't informed of her maid's death and feels cheated and lost. Her eyes fill with tears, and she cannot believe that such an important fact was kept from her. This betrayal undermines her trust in everyone around her. Heath tries to calm Daphne by explaining that the death of a servant girl is a tragedy, but she shouldn't dwell on it as there are other important things to do. He gently reminds her of her duties as Empress and the need to remain calm and strong-minded. He has heard that Daphne was not particularly close to the dead maid, and believes that even if that is true, the fact of her death remains unchanged. Heath tries to convince Daphne to move forward and deal with the challenges that life throws up despite the odds. Daphne is furious at Heath, accusing him of just wanting to forget everything and not trying to deal with the situation. She's sure he's deliberately avoiding memories, afraid to face the truth and his feelings. Anger and pain overwhelm her. She can't contain her emotions. Daphne remembers the maid she did not know about until she died. Her death was an occasion for reflection and revelation that Daphne could not ignore. She realizes that this loss should have opened her eyes to many things, but Hiss doesn't seem to see it or doesn't want to see it. Heath, reflecting sadly, says that even though he was not close to that maid and did not know her life, her death still left a mark on his soul. He feels a deep sadness, realizing that he missed the opportunity to know her better and perhaps help her. Daphne looks at Heath with despair and anger. She can't express her sadness openly, and it torments her. She realizes that Heath is suffering too, but she can't forgive his indifference and indifference to what has happened. It tears her heart apart. Daphne doesn't understand how Hiss can just forget about the death of a servant girl. Her voice is full of accusation. She demands an explanation and an understanding of why he would do such a thing. It seems to her that he is just trying to hide from responsibility and does not want to admit his guilt. Heath recalls that only 2 days ago he decided to look at Daphne's positive qualities. But now the situation has changed dramatically, and he is not sure about his feelings. It is difficult for him to cope with internal contradictions. He does not know how to do the right thing. Hiss tries to explain that there is no death that should not be mourned. He is sure that even insignificant lives deserve to be remembered and honored. However, his words sound hollow to Daphne, and she sees no sincerity in them. Daphne says with pain in her voice that Heath just wants to erase the maid's existence, as if she was a simple mistake. She can't believe his indifference and indifference, feeling her soul torn apart by pain and frustration. Hiss calls her name quietly, realizing that he has hurt her feelings. He realizes the depth of her pain and experience, and it makes him rethink his actions and attitude towards her. He realizes that he must change something to regain her trust and love. Daphne, in tears, questions whether Heath knows what it means to die. Her face is full of pain, reflecting a deep emotional wound. It's as if the end of the world is coming, but she wonders if he will stand there and deny it all. Her heart clenches as if a needle has been stuck in it. This moment is so agonizing that words cannot fully convey her anguish. She holds up her fist, trying to cope with the emotions that have come over her. Daphne's sadness is expressed not only in words, but also in actions. Her thoughts turn to death, forgotten by all who knew her. This adds even more tragedy to her tale of life and death. She recalls moments when she did her best to live despite the agony. But now her willpower is being severely tested. Her gaze is determined despite the tears streaming down her face. Hiss, immersed in his thoughts, tries to explain that he has never been wrong. His words reflect the internal struggle he is having. He feels guilt and the weight of loss that haunts him. His concern over the death of a man emphasizes his humanity. He remembers his parents and those who died in the palace. These memories make him even more anxious and in pain. Hiss opens up even more by mentioning his past brides. Their deaths add depth to his suffering. This makes his words even more heavy and filled with tragedy. Daphne and Hiss, both drowning in their feelings, reflect the hopelessness and pain of loss. Their stories intertwine to create a complex picture of life and death, love, and loss. Their dialogue and emotions create an intense drama in which every moment is drenched in bitterness and regret. They both face their inner demons as they try to find answers to their agonizing questions. Daphne, the purple-haired empress, begins her morning with a cup of tea. She reflects on how all the decisions were made quickly despite yesterday's events. Her eyes glow with determination and calmness, but thoughts of recent events keep her on her toes. At that moment, she notices a stamped letter. The letter informs her that the masquerade will take place in 3 days. The event seems unexpected and urgent. The seal on the letter confirms its importance, and Daphne realizes that something significant awaits her. Daphne concludes that the emperor was in a hurry since he made the official announcement immediately after informing her. This suggests the importance and urgency of the masquerade. Her anxiety increases, for such events always carry ulterior motives and intrigue. Daphne realizes that, from a logical point of view, it all makes sense. After all, the society they live in is hierarchical, and such decisions must be made quickly. She accepts the inevitability of this and prepares herself for what comes next. She ponders that if she can win Hisa's heart, what will happen to her in this world? This reflection causes her doubt and anxiety. The future seems uncertain, and she feels the responsibility weighing heavy on her shoulders. At night, while on the balcony, Daphne notices someone throwing pebbles. She wonders how they know she is here and why they are doing this. Her anxiety grows, and she tries to figure out who is trying to get her attention. She sees someone down below and suspects that this person wants her to look up at the sky. This makes her perplexed and curious. Her heart begins to beat faster, and she feels like something important is about to happen. But Daphne can't hear what the man is saying. She tries to understand, but no sounds come to her. This increases her anxiety and confusion. She strains, trying to hear a word, but to no avail. She asks for a repeat of what was said. Hiss appears, and she realizes that it was he who was downstairs. His appearance gives her an unexpected reaction. Daphne didn't expect to see him here, and it gives her mixed feelings. Heath apologizes to Daphne. His apology gives her mixed feelings. She doesn't know how to react to it, and tension hangs in the air. Her eyes flicker with hope for understanding and forgiveness, but also fear of what may follow. Daphne stands on the balcony, admiring the night sky and contemplating the fact that there is no death that is not worth mourning. Her thoughts plunge her into a deep melancholy, causing her to reflect on the frailty of life. Hiss, understanding her feelings, agrees with her words, but as emperor, he cannot afford to show weakness. He needs to remain strong and unwavering, even despite his inner doubts and fears. Daphne continues to ponder her feelings. She knows that once she gives vent to her emotions, the council and the temple will instantly turn against her, as they did with previous emperors and empresses. Hai's heart aches as she remembers her parents, who are no longer there. Their deaths have left a deep mark on his soul, and he cannot allow himself to forget them, even if it causes him suffering. He also remembers all the empresses banished by the temple. These memories cause him bitterness and anxiety, reminding him of the injustice and cruelty of the world he lives in. Daphne, seeing his confusion, assures him that his death would have affected her as well, despite what it may seem otherwise. Her words are full of sincerity and compassion, showing how much she cares for him. Heath admits that he fears death just as much as Daphne does. He's only pretending not to be killed. This game of being strong and steadfast is hard for him, but he knows he has no other choice. Daphne assures him that they are both in the same boat, trying to survive in this cruel world. Her support and understanding gives him the strength to keep fighting despite all the difficulties and dangers. They realize how important they are to each other. A deep sense of unity and solidarity is read in these words and looks, which will help them to cope with any adversity. Daphne finally realized why Hisa, the blue-haired emperor's affection scale, kept rising. Looking at her clenched hand, she realized that her feelings for him were getting stronger and stronger. Daphne remembered how Hiss had always said that whoever wore the crown should be able to bear its weight. Those words began to take on a new meaning for her, as if she had finally realized the true meaning of that proverb. She turned to the starry sky where the meteor shower was pouring down. Daphne realized that Heath was trying to cope and protect her, showing his strength and determination despite the odds. As she hugged Heath, Daphne felt his support and concern. She promised herself to make an effort, even though she realized that the road to their common goal would not be easy and full of challenges. Hiss had said that it would be enough for him, and that sounded reassuring. Daphne felt that her love and devotion to the Emperor would give her the strength to overcome all obstacles. Hiss asked Daphne to remember the important words if she ever left the palace. She curiously asked what exactly he wanted her to remember. Hiss pointed to the meteor shower and said it would lead her to safety. Those words gave Daphne confidence that they would always find a path to safety and happiness as long as they were together. The butler designer created a dress for Empress Daphne that would be both eye-catching and modest. He expressed his admiration for how he managed to combine these opposing qualities. The butler explains that since the Empress has cold, light, and wintry tones, she needed bright and eye-catching colors so that the clothes would not contrast with her appearance. He used a sapphire-colored fabric representing the ocean, which accentuates her elegance and grace. Daphne thinks about how her friends Laura and Moss are busy and the butler is bugging her. She agrees to his suggestion to walk around in her new dress for a while. The butler continues his analysis, saying that the bright blue color accentuates her build. He was right to add the jewels at the waist, which, if higher, would draw attention away from her face. Now her face looks perfect. Daphne senses that the conversation is dragging on and that it will last a long time. She prepares to discuss the dress and alterations further. Preparations for the ball begin the day after her conversation with Hiss. Daphne decides to focus on preparing for the important event, trying not to be distracted by extraneous thoughts. While practicing her dancing, Daphne remembers moments from her past that make her nostalgic and lift her spirits. She uses these memories to add energy to her movements. While practicing, Daphne confesses to Heath that she is a terrible dancer. She apologizes for not talking about it before, but now it's important for their preparations for the ball. Heath smiles, holding back laughter, and comforts Daphne by telling her that it doesn't matter if she can dance. His encouragement helps her feel more confident and keep practicing. Daphne, thinking about Hissa's consolations, remembers his good sides. He always supports her and helps her in difficult moments. This gives her strength and confidence, which is reflected in her face and mood. The designer butler informs Daphne that it is time to call her servants. Daphne thanks him, smiling and showing that she appreciates his help. This is the beginning of an important and solemn moment in their palace. Suddenly, Daphne notices Hiss and asks what he is doing here. Hiss looks confused and slightly flustered, not knowing how to explain his presence. Daphne, remaining calm, tells him not to worry about yesterday's incident. Heath admits that he wants to give Daphne something important. He pulls out a piece of jewelry and says that even at a masquerade, the emperor and empress must wear a distinctive insignia. His serious tone shows how important this is to him. Hiss hands Daphne a magnificent necklace with a huge blue stone. He explains that she should have this piece of jewelry just in case. Daphne looks at the necklace with wonder and admiration. Daphne suddenly remembers that Heath used magic last time, too. She suspects that it is magical jewelry again and looks at it with disbelief. However, when she sees how beautiful it looks on her, she admits that it suits her. Heath is about to leave, assuring Daphne that they will meet at the site. He leaves her pensive, feeling mixed emotions. Daphne watches him leave, her thoughts preoccupied with his words and the gift. When Heath turns around and says she looks ravishing today, Daphne feels her heart warming. She sees the sincerity in his eyes and realizes that those words mean a lot to him. The look of sincerity on Hissa's face makes Daphne realize his feelings. She touches the gifted jewelry, feeling its significance. These moments create a strong bond between them, building their trust and respect. Daphne realizes that Hissa had no choice but to become emotionless. The gift of jewelry symbolizes their bond and commitment to each other and to the empire. The Imperial Masquerade Ball brought all the guests together in a beautifully festive atmosphere, regardless of their status. The event was different in that everyone could participate on equal terms, and there was a price limit on the outfits. Nobles could afford to wear simple outfits and vice versa, which created an illusion of equality among the guests. Masks concealed faces, making everyone present mysterious and equal. Many guests were awaiting the arrival of His Majesty. Questions about his appearance hovered in the air, adding intrigue and anticipation to the evening. Daphne, the violet-haired empress in a magnificent outfit, approached Hiss and motioned for him to come inside, showing her confidence and grace. Hiss, whose blue hair was hidden under a mask, replied with a chuckle, emphasizing that if one had already begun to act, one must continue to the end. Daphne laughed, adding that this applied to their activity as well, making their dialogue lively and casual. Their relationship seemed harmonious and natural. The guests discussed that the emperor was not used to showing weakness, which made him a strong leader in their eyes. His confidence and determination inspired everyone around him. An old servant reflected on the fact that the emperor had to hold back his feelings when he was offended. It added depth to his image and showed his human side. Daphne extended her hand to Heath, inviting him to continue their journey together, symbolizing the trust and unity between them. At the masquerade, Daphne, full of determination and confidence, extends her hand to Heath, inviting him to join her. She promises not to judge him for his frankness, ready to support him. Heath, embarrassed and a little nervous, accepts her hand, hoping to understand her better. He is eager to reveal his feelings and find common ground with Daphne. Daphne, who has already taken the initiative, is surprised by his hesitation and reminds him that she herself offered him her hand. She wants to show him her sincerity and support. Smiling slightly, Daphne thanks Heath for his boldness. She realizes that she had been thinking too much about him and her feelings. With a glass of champagne, Daphne prepares for the ball to begin. She asks everyone to announce the start as soon as they are ready, emphasizing the importance of the moment. Heath apologizes for keeping everyone waiting and raises his glass. He realizes that true love is born out of sincerity and feelings, not plans and books. With his glass raised, Hiss solemnly announces the beginning of the masquerade. His words penetrate the hearts of those present, creating an atmosphere of magic and romance. Daphne, laughing, remarks that this is the perfect place to fall in love. She sees this moment as an opportunity to start a new relationship. Daphne watches Hiss talking to the ministers and becomes bored. She begins to observe the other guests, finding this activity unexpectedly interesting. One of the guests, noticing her boredom, wonders if she is bored. Daphne, out of curiosity, continues to watch, finding new aspects of the masquerade.